Hi, this is Eric Beyer of Old Vine, Texas, a new winery tasting room featuring 100% Texas wines from wineries all over the state. We are located in Mansfield, Texas, inside of Ancora Event Center on Broad Street. We have weekly tastings, charcuterie board to enjoy, live music, and a new wine club. Go visit our website at oldvinetexas.com to sign up for our newsletter and learn more. Or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Old Vine, Texas. We'll see you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Are you ready to pop your cork? In the left corner is 6'4", 242 pounds, with a record of 45-0, the undisputed.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Will.
Hey, how many bottles of wine have you had?
Well, Will, it's not the wine. I'm just so excited about the podcast.
Yeah, I am too. But this is not a boxing match. This is Vino, Texas Vino. Welcome, everybody, back to Vino, Texas Vino. I am your host, Will, and today we're coming to you from Eden Hill with our guests, Bill Burns and Chris Hornbaker, the winemaker of Eden Hill. Welcome, folks. How y'all doing today?
Great to meet you guys.
Very good.
Well, so just so y'all know, this is my first video episode for the year. This is also kicking off my season 3 of Vino, Texas Vino. So I'm hoping I don't fail on getting all the lower thirds show up on the screen here.
So I can scooch down. It's cool.
So this is going to be kind of fun to kind of figure all this out as we're going. This is going to be fun because then, of course, I get to edit this when I get home. So, guys, it's great to have you all on the show. Real quick, let me go through a couple of quick announcements and then we'll get the show going. As we all know, that we are kicking off our season 3 party at 555 Vineyards in Valley View on January the 25th, along with Texas Wine Lovers. So we're literally going to take over the winery and we're just going to have a massive party, I guess you want to call it. So it's a free event. Y'all come out. Y'all can support 555. Come support Texas wineries. And hopefully maybe we'll have some surprise guests that come and crash the party. I mean, you know, feel free to crash that, hint, hint. And then also come and talk about Texas wines with us. And then also this episode right now that I'm recording is our very first video podcast. So just like anything else that we've done with our podcast is we just did it on the fly and adjusted as we went. So if y'all remember when we did episode 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and all of that, how bad the audio was, it was pretty horrible. Y'all can definitely chime in. You don't have to just sit there.
Do you know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
Like, I'm going to show my age now. So growing up, I used to watch that TV show WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yes,
God,
yes.
yeah.
With like Les Nessman and Dr. Fever.
Yes.
That's like
Great
talking
show.
into a microphone. That's what this always reminds
Great
me
show.
of.
Well, you know, one of these days, I'm hoping I'm do wireless, so I don't have to have all these wires on this table, you know?
Right.
But you know, I've heard some positives and negatives about it, so we'll see what happens.
As long as we don't throw turkeys out of a helicopter.
That's right.
I'm good for that.
As God is my witness, I thought they could fly.
That's a very WKRP in Cincinnati inside joke. If you guys haven't seen the show,
we're not going to do that.
go to YouTube or I guess Amazon Prime.
Hey, we can
find
throw-
it.
we can throw
Find
some-
the turkey out of the helicopter episode.
I'm gonna have to actually put that in this video. You know that, right?
Yes.
Yes,
You know, we can throw some grapevines out of the window, out of the helicopter, if you want to do that.
true. Just not. It's not kind of the same effect though as a turkey learning to fly.
Well, I mean, it's true, but I mean, at least it'd be a softer landing. Oh man. So with our videos here that we're doing, you can find us on YouTube at We Know Texas Vino. And then of course you can find us on any podcasting platform. And of course find us on Facebook at We Know Texas Vino. And then of course, you know, I love our website, weknowtexasvino.wine. By the way, the .wine domain name is very expensive.
It's
I
more
imagine.
expensive than .com or something.
Yes, it's like I didn't realize how much it was. I got it for a deal for 2 years, so I was like, okay, I'll buy it. And then the renewal, and I was like, oh my god.
Well, I had no idea.
Oh yeah, the renewal on it's insane. Well, being an IT person, you know, when you have a regular .com, .net, .org name,
Sure.
you don't have to do any conversions on that. Well, when you do a luxury domain name, .wine, you have to do a conversion on that, and so there's a little bit more work to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it is what it is. So now, before we get too deep into this, do you want to go ahead and open a bottle of wine?
I sure can.
While Chris explains. Chris, it's been
Let's definitely open some wine.
Yes.
It's been 2 years since July of 2023 since I've been here, episode 21.
Yes, so much has changed.
So much has changed. So kind of tell our listeners and our viewers now, what has changed for Eden Hill since we were here?
So since 21, Eden Hill has come up with all kinds of new blends that we've got in our tasting rooms. We've been putting them into competitions. We've also been working with new vineyards, especially out in the Texas High Plains.
Okay.
And 3 of the wines we've got right now are 3 of our top award-winning wines. And so Bill is opening up our Albarino right now. This Albarino is from John Oswald's vineyard out in Brownfield. And just this year, this Albarino was picked as one of the top 12 top wines of Texas by Texas Monthly Magazine. And it was featured at the Texas State Fair.
Oh.
And the story behind this wine is kind of funny because for many years, Mom and Dad and I, my dad Clark and my mom Linda, who are partners and owners with me in the winery, we loved Albarino. And we thought that Albarino could be one of the top white grapes of Texas. And so we had talked to our grape grower, John Oswald, for many years about planting it. And he was unsure, it didn't have a lot of history in Texas, but the Albarinos that we tried from Texas were fantastic. Big lemon citrus aroma, really crisp, very clean wines. And eventually, John said, you know what? I think let's give it a try. Let's plant it. And now he's got many more acres of Albarino than even the acres he planted for us because it's become such a popular wine in Texas. In fact, we now sell this by the glass at several restaurants like Harvest at the Masonic, a new restaurant in downtown McKinney. It's a beautiful restaurant. It's like this 3-story restaurant with a live music bar on the top. Oh. And as well as some other restaurants around Texas.
Awesome.
And it's doing very, very well. And we think that Albarino is going to become, I think, one of the top white wines of Texas.
I agree with that.
Before we get too deep in this, let's toast this.
Cheers.
Cheers. Very clean. I love that. Love that citrus aroma on the wine.
It's a nice wine of authenticity to what Albarino should be, which is really cool to see that out of Texas fruit. You get that grassiness, you get that little like dry hay note and that bright citrus. And it's just, it's a wine of great by the glass, but it's also really good with food.
I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to laugh at me when I say this. You know what it reminds me of when I smell it? Back in the day when I used to work on a ranch, I remember mowing down the alfalfa hay and that smell of alfalfa. In the summer.
Like fresh cut grass, fresh cut alfalfa.
There's a difference between fresh cut grass and fresh cut alfalfa. I mean, it's just a totally different smell. And it reminded me, when I took a big smell of that, it just reminded me of that. Yeah, I mean, that's immediately the first thing I thought of when I smelled it. I mean, it's just, I love that smell.
Well, Dad will get a kick out of that because, Dad was a farm boy. He was raised in Kansas. So he's very familiar with the smell of cut alfalfa, wheat, things like that. So
that is absolutely phenomenal.
I truly believe that this is going to become a real standout wine in Texas, and I would love to see more Texas wineries work with Albarino. You can do so many different styles with it. Ours is very clean. It's done in a stainless steel style, so it's fermented stainless steel. It doesn't see any oak. I just want to keep that bright citrus fruit very prominent in the wine. But with Albarino, you can do oak-aged Albarino. You could do a partial mallow if you want. I left all the malic acid in this wine. I blocked the malolactic fermentation. But you can do a partial mallow. You can get softer notes, like I said, if you want to age it in oak. It's an extremely versatile white wine. And one of the best parts about growing it in Texas is we have gotten it every year.
Right.
No matter the weather, no matter what Mother Nature throws at you, the Albarino comes in with good chemistry every single year that we work with it. So a great wine, and it's possible to be very consistent as a wine. I think those two things make it a standout for Texas going forward.
One of the things is I actually love about this one, and it cracks me up. So if you don't swirl it and you just smell it, I get that hay, alfalfa cut hay. Okay, then you swirl it, and then you smell it. I get that citrus.
The fruit takes over.
The fruit takes over.
Oh, I said citric. Sorry, it's citric.
Right.
I mess with citrix also. Okay. So, but I get that citric smell. Citrix. I'm just going to stop talking today. But I get that whole citrus
As
smell.
this video goes on, or it's going to be harder and harder to pronounce things, I'm sure. But
It probably is. But I get that whole lemon type smell out of it. I get that good smell out of it. But again, if you just don't swirl it, you just smell it. I get that cut, fresh alfalfa hay, and then of course the taste on it. It's just absolutely crisp. It's a great finish on it. Not very heavy and acidic. Because sometimes I'll drink some Albarinos and it hits you right here in the back of the throat a little bit.
Right. Sometimes, they could be a bit too tart.
Yes.
In the back. So this is one of the beauties about Texas Albarino is that the acid's going to be just a hair lower than in its native Spain.
Right. You did a good job on this.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Just makes me want to have like swordfish with like a cilantro lime salsa. By the way, you can actually get that recipe on New York Times.
Is that a good pitch there?
Yes, that's good. I think we can get New York Times promo there to help out on the,
we could definitely do
on the
that.
show.
Well,
But any fish with like a cream sauce or maybe even just like a grilled fish.
Well,
This is a shrimp scampi wine, if ever one there was, and just a touch of cream
thanks. Now I want
and
some.
a touch of Zatarain's hot sauce in the garlic butter. Just a little spice makes this nice.
So when y'all making lunch?
What? Let's
Well, see, we've already helped you out twice, though. New York Times and Zatarain's. So we've got 2 brand promos in there already. But no, that sounds great.
I've had it with it. It's really good.
So it's funny you say that. Is earlier this week I was going to take a cooking class on making lobster ravioli at Charlottetown.
Well, Bill and I will be right over to help you.
No doubt about that.
lobster ravioli.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to take the class, but they sent me the email with the recipe of the packet with a blood orange salad on it. So I know how to make homemade pasta. That's no big deal. So I just got to figure out how to cook lobster. I've never done it before. So I guess I'm gonna have to buy some bottles of Albarino and
Well, I'm a big connoisseur of homemade pasta, so I'll have to be the judge of that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll invite you over. I also make homemade gnocchi also. So
You make homemade gnocchi. That's one of my favorite things here.
And one of my favorite things to cook because I can do it perfect every time. And I do it with a very acidic white wine. Or actually I do it with a Vineyard also, is I do a chicken piccata with risotto.
Oh, okay.
With a 4-cheese risotto. It's, man.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you know what? Viognier, you mentioned Viognier. Viognier is also another good white grape for Texas, but amazingly, it blends perfectly with Albarino.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, in the past, we've made a blend of Albarino and Viognier. It was very popular for us. As a matter of fact, one of our fellow winemakers up here in North Texas, Chris McIntosh from Edge of the Lake Vineyard, he also makes an Albarino Viognier blend.
Oh, yeah.
It's a wonderful wine. Definitely head out to Edge of the Lake and check that out.
Just so happens I'll be there tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. That's great. Yeah.
I've
It
been
does.
pushing Chris to do Albarino, and I think he's getting tired of hearing me.
Well,
Viognier, excuse me. I'm
So-
a big Viognier fan.
So I'm going to throw this at you. There's a specific winery named Landon who did a holiday white that actually surprised me with Viognier,
Okay.
but he did it with Pinot Grigio and Picpoul Blanc.
Oh, nice. Yeah. The lip stinger,
Yes.
Picpoul Blanc.
And what the great thing about it was, what made it so good, because the acidic in Pinot Grigio and Picpoul Blanc, and then adding that Viognier made it very floral. And then he added just a little bit of back sugar on it. Now, Bob, I love you, but I'm just going to say this. I love to hate that bottle of wine, but I love to hate it all at the same time because I'm a sweet guy, but not a sweet guy. And so when you drink it, very good flavors. I mean, that floral was coming out very prominent and stuff, but that sweetness right here would hit. And I'm like, no bueno. I don't like that.
Okay.
But
you want more of a dry finish.
I would have loved a really good dry finish, but it was good. Don't get me wrong. It was amazing. And I had people drink it and they're like, I want to love to hate this, but I hate to love it at the same time. I mean, it was really that good, but it was that little bit of sugar that kind of offset that acidity that threw me off a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Picpoul. And Picpoul also is a really up and coming grape here in Texas.
Yeah, we're going to give shout outs to Breaking Bud for growing a whole bunch out there.
Yes, right. And Krista Hartman.
Yes, Krista Hartman.
Just north of here. She has a whole Picpoul vineyard. Her Picpoul, she makes 100% Picpoul.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Oh, and she just opened up too recently.
Yeah, she did.
So y'all need to go check out Red River Provisions also with K.K. Hartman.
Picpoul was the first flight that I tasted at the Rodeo and Cork Wine Competition in November.
Really?
My first 10 wines was a flight of Picpouls. A grape I'm indifferent about. Like I said, hate to love them, love to hate them kind of thing. But the thing that was really cool is they were all outstanding wines, and understanding them and knowing what they're about when you're blind tasting, well, you know what it is, but you're tasting 10 different wines from 10 different wineries.
Right.
They were really, really good. And I found out that you could kind of pick the Texas ones out of there. There were 6 Texas Picpouls in there, and there was only 3 from France and 1 from somewhere else. So it was really cool to see that Texas Picpoul was, not a large entry into the competition, but it was a good scoring category. Right. We had a lot of silvers and golds out of that category.
Interesting. Well, speaking of up and coming grapes, you know what Texas is really known for growing the most of in the world? One grape, one varietal.
I would say Tempranillo, most likely.
No.
I didn't know this until I read it the other day, honestly. Blanc de Bois.
Blanc de Bois. Okay.
Texas is the world's leading producer of Blanc de Bois.
Oh,
I did not know that.
Yeah. We used to grow Blanc de Bois here, but it did all right. It made an okay wine up here in North Texas. I would say it seems to do better in South Texas,
or East Texas. Yes.
Or East Texas, yes.
When you got a lot of humidity.
It needs a bit more humidity to really perform.
Yep. In fact, there's a lady over in Stephenville at Bar Ditch Winery. I love how we're just name dropping all these people.
Right.
No, it's great. Yeah.
So
let's do it.
Bar Ditch Winery, she's growing Blanc de Bois out there, and she does it unfiltered. And, when I would
like to try that.
When I saw it, I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do an unfiltered white. But let me tell you something. It was like when it was nice and chilled. I mean, I'm talking about like 45, 50 degrees, okay? It tasted like eating a cold apricot, unfiltered.
Sounds delicious.
It was actually really good. And I was really shocked because I'm used to having a Picpoul Blanc, a Blanc de Bois being a little bit more acidic, a little bit more clear. In fact, actually my first time drinking Blanc de Bois, I thought it was actually water because they had filtered it so much that it was crystal clear like water. And that was crazy. And I'm like, holy crap, that's the best water in the world. I was fixing to find out what spring they got that one from. And they told me, oh, no, that's our Blanc de Bois. But man, that right now is one of the biggest grapes that Texas grows. We grow the world supply of Blanc de Bois right now.
I can believe that because Texas historically had some issues with Pierce's disease, and Blanc de Bois is Pierce disease tolerant.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's resistant, but I think it's tolerant.
I think it's tolerant. Yeah.
And it does take well to humidity as well. So if you're doing East Texas or South Texas, definitely would be a wonderful grape to grow.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. So you got some good stuff going on here, but Chris, go ahead. You had something you was going to say.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We stopped with the Albarino. We kind of went down that road.
Yes.
The Albarino road.
Hey, you know what? We get
it's
talking
okay
about,
though. I'm okay to go down lots of roads today.
Smell it now. You'll see the depth of aromatics in this wine. I can sit here and do this and get as much enjoyment out of the wine just as like I'm drinking it. I love smelling wine and seeing how it changes in the glass over a period of time.
Do you know there was a lady over in Australia that before she became a winemaker, she was making perfumes. And she said the chemistry in making wine and perfumes is almost identical in many cases. And I was like, all right, so when are you going to make wine perfume? She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I want to be able to take my finger and dab it into my wine and just slap it on my neck.
Yes, right. Ode to Cabernet or something like that.
And she looked at me and she goes, that's not a bad idea. I was like, there's a lot of women that'll pay good money for that.
I think you're onto something. Well, with Albarino, another thing that makes it a wonderful wine for Texas is that when the summer hits in Texas and you're basically standing on the surface of the sun, it's 140 degrees.
That's in the shade.
And that's in the shade. Right? That's with like ice in your pockets and everything. It's still 140 degrees. You want something very crisp and light. And that's where Albarino really hits its stride.
Right.
So we see our sales of Albarino rise dramatically in that transition between spring and summer. Mm-hmm. And by the summer, we're almost sold out of it.
Wow.
It's just that it's a wine that cuts through the Texas heat in the summer.
Right. I mean, I love me a good Albarino. And while we're even talking about Albarino, you know who makes a great sparkling Albarino?
Who's that? Tell me.
Elisa Christopher.
She makes a sparkling Albarino.
She makes.
That's another thing you can do with Albarino is it does make a wonderful sparkling wine.
What is it called? Champagne Method.
Yeah,
Method Champenois.
Method Champenois. That's it. I knew where I was going on it. But real quick, if y'all would,
sure.
Hold that bottle up to the camera right here just a little bit.
Yeah, you bet.
So we can. I want to make sure that people see this a little bit. And I just totally put it a $sign.
And your sister Wendy did that label, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Wendy, my sister, is a photographer. She's an art photographer. Uh-huh. Also a teacher down in Austin. And this is actually her photo on the label.
Nice.
I'm going to do like the Vanna White thing. Label on the camera.
One needs to put a dress on and a wig.
And shave.
And shave, right. Yeah. There's that part too.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, the Albarino label was photographed from my sister. She actually works on a lot of the labels with me here at Eden Hill. So,
nice.
Wendy, this is for you.
Yeah.
Thank you again for your great photograph on the Albarino label.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure why it keeps adding $signs to the...
Is it really adding $signs over the...
Well, so the first time I pulled the lower third across, it put $1 sign on it. And then it pulled it over a second time, it put $2 signs on it. I'm like...
Is this like AI? Is it already judging the wine from the video?
I guess so.
I think it's at least worth $3 signs myself.
That's right.
Let me put it back up and record $3 signs on it.
The one thing that we didn't mention about this is that's a gold medal winner at Lone Star International, and it also won Best in Class.
Oh.
And a short time after that, the wine was picked as a Texas Monthly Top 10 Texas wines, which they had Chris was down for it. They had a little, like a war ceremony down at the opening of the Texas State Fair, and it was a big event. So, yes, that is a really good bottle of wine.
I commend you for that. That is a good bottle of wine.
Thank you. We're very proud of that wine.
Very good bottle.
Thank you to John Oswald for growing some great Texas Albarino grapes.
Yes.
Awesome. So what's the next bottle over there?
So we opened a bottle of the Good Texan. This is like a wine club member favorite. It's just a fan favorite here at the winery. A 75% Tempranillo, 21% Cabernet, 3% Cabernet Franc, and 1% Petit Verdot. This 1%, 2% Petit Verdot thing, you'll see in a lot of our wines. Said it's going to be on Chris's gravestone many, many years down the road. Here is Chris Hornbaker with a splash of Petit Verdot. So it's one of my favorite blending grapes. But this wine is really round on the palate because it's got a very smooth tannin profile to it. And it's a pretty fruit-driven wine that develops nicely as it's opened. It's one of the few wines that we have on our menu that I've tasted, and I dissect everything, that actually will throw a blue fruit note after it's open a while. You'll get this blueberry kind of note on the nose more than the palate, but it's there. But it's got to be coaxed out, and it's got to give it a little time, and it'll come out. Very layered wine.
So
the story behind this wine,
there's a good story here.
Because you were asking what's changed with Eden Hill over the last couple of years.
That was the story I'm going for, because the story on this is really great.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many customers over the years, and Eden Hill started in 2010. That's when we were bonded. Our vineyard, of course, was planted several years before that. We've had so many customers that come into the tasting room, and they'll say to us, I did not know that Texas wines could be good. Mm-hmm. And we still hear that today.
Yep.
And I was determined, after so many years of seeing our customers have that experience of being surprised that Texas wine could be good, that we would come up with a wine that we'd call the Good Texan. And so over the years, I've learned from vintage after vintage, which grapes can I get to make a good, solid blend with year after year, no matter what. And red grapes in Texas are a bit more tough to do from year to year than white grapes are. White grapes, obviously, you can pick them earlier.
Right.
You can get ahead of the big heat swings we have in the summertime. You can get ahead maybe of some of the sudden rainstorms we might get, because Texas is mostly still a continental climate. So to get that full ripeness in a red grape, you have to let it hang. You have to get that hang time going. And that means you've got to take lots of risks with, late summer rains, or maybe heat spikes that drive the bricks up, but the ripeness level doesn't quite get there in the fruit. So really the answer to all of that in Texas is to blend.
Right.
And when you think about it, the best wines in the world are blends.
Right.
If you say Bordeaux is the best wine in the world, well, Bordeaux is a blend. Left bank, right bank, they're both blends. So I was determined to make a good Texan blend.
Okay.
One that I could pull off every year, and one that had some great leather and black cherry that you'd get from Tempranillo. Get the king of grapes in there, Cabernet Sauvignon, get that strawberry note from the Cab. Throw a little bit of Cab Franc in there for some elegance.
Okay.
And then back it up with some body with a 1 or 2% Petit Verdot in the blend. And every year now we're able to make this wine because the percentages of the blend, the different vineyards we're sourcing this from in the High Plains, we can now pull this wine off just about every year.
Nice.
And so when we did this wine, I said, I need a label for it. I've got to create a nice label for this. What am I going to do? And I thought to myself, a Longhorn Cadillac would be a great photograph for something named the Good Texan. And I had trouble, though, finding a Longhorn Cadillac. I did. There's one down at there's Billy Bob's has a Longhorn Cadillac in Fort Worth.
Right.
But the thing is that with you may not know this, but with labeling laws, you can't have things like flags and things like that on your labels. And the Billy Bob's Cadillac has like Texas flags hanging off of it and things like that. And so I got with one of my best friends. His name is Carlos Seckler. He owns Seckler Creative here in Dallas. And he said, you know what, Chris, I can make this label. And so he actually created the label for me of this Longhorn Caddy. And then we took the license plate that's on my pickup truck, which is the Good Texan.
Right.
If you see me driving around town, you now know that's my license plate on my red pickup truck. I don't have a Longhorn Caddy. I wish I did, but I don't.
It's not hard to buy a Cadillac and put some Longhorns on it.
It's shocking. You can actually find, this is a 1976 Cadillac Eldorado. It's shocking. You can actually go on the different trade websites and find 76 Cadillac Eldorados. So someday we're going to do that. We're going to grab an Eldorado and put some horns on it.
Make sure it's convertible.
Yes, it has to be.
And it's white.
Yes, just like Boss Hog from Dukes of
Exactly where I was going with that one.
Well, I already did my WKRP in Cincinnati joke. So, yes, I also grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard. Yes, Catherine Bach. Yes, everybody remembers Dukes of Hazzard. And Boss Hog with his white Cadillac with the horns, right? So he came up with a label, and it's a huge hit. And that the license plate on the car is my license plate, Good Texan.
Nice.
And it matches the wine name.
Yeah.
And so that's what this wine was meant to symbolize, so that when you come into the tasting room, and I encourage people out there, when you come into a Texas tasting room, don't come in expecting the wines to be bad. Don't walk in and say, well, I wasn't expecting the wines to be good. Instead, walk into a Texas tasting room and say, I'm here to try your great wine. Right. I'm here to try those good Texas wines that I know that you have.
Yep.
That's really important to me. I think the Texas industry as a whole has made a huge shift in the last 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's picking up awards in all kinds of international competitions. A lot of the wines now are being given point scores and ratings. I know that James Suckling is rating wines right now in Texas.
Just in the state.
Yep.
And so it's very important for us to say to people, you can now walk into Texas wineries and expect to have good Texan wine.
And I've been doing this podcast now. We're going on 3 years now. And I've been to 84 different wineries now. And I can't say that I've not gone into a winery, that I've not had any good wine from a winery. Now I'm going to preface that as well. Well, I can't preface, I'll postface that. But I have tasted wine that when I drank it at that moment, because of what I ate prior did not sit well on my palate. But I went ahead and bought the bottle and then tried it again later, and it was absolutely amazing. Yeah. And working at Landon Winery, I have people that come in and do tastings all the time, and they always say dealer's choice. And so the first thing I asked out of their mouth is, what did you eat before you came here? And they would tell me, well, I ate this, and this, and this, and this, this. And I'm sitting there thinking, a process in my head, okay, we have this and this and this and this. Which one of these would be great with what they had? Because I want them to have a great tasting experience when they drink. And so you may go into a winery, you may have something that may not sit well on your palate. And it's because you probably ate something that's still residing on your palate that you need to actually kind of get that off your palate and try something else. And I've tried crackers and I've tried water. I've yet to figure out the only way to get things off my palate is to brush it.
Actually, with a toothbrush or something?
Yes, with an actual toothbrush. I found the only way to get something completely off my palate was to brush my teeth. Don't put toothpaste or anything like that. I just get a toothbrush and just kind of like.
I didn't think about that. I've got a lot of free toothbrushes from my dentist. We could put them in the tasting room and we could just brush people's teeth.
Call it a palate cleaner. Don't call it a toothbrush. Call it
instead of a palate cleanser, it's a palate cleaner or something like that.
But I mean, if you think about it, it scrubs the palate a little bit, and it kind of gets anything that's built inside that palate out. And I've done that a couple of times, and I've actually tested that, and it actually works. It actually changed that taste.
Bill sounds like he's got something he really wants to.
I have gotten I just brushed my teeth thing, so give me a couple pours to get it off my palate. I'm like, okay, whatever. There.
Wrestling does that too,
Yeah, with people's palates, you hope that by the second wine you pour for them, if you're doing a red tasting with somebody, by the second wine, you would hope to have an idea of what kind of wines they like.
Oh yeah.
And when I pour wine in the tasting rooms, I talk about the structure of the wine. I don't get involved a lot in flavors unless it's like obvious, like our Montepulciano's spicy red cherry. I hit them, this is one of our lighter reds. It's just a great summer red. And you hit them with that and they taste it and they're like, wow, it is. Yeah, it's a nice light red. I can see this with different things. You want to make them think about what they're tasting and not just bury them with flavors and stuff like that and not oversell anything.
Oh yeah.
But the people come in when you have to watch them, how they taste too.
Yes.
And see their eyebrow goes up after they taste something. That's a natural reaction. I like that, and so it's kind of fun interacting with people in tasting rooms to see how they taste wines and what they're looking for out of the wines.
Oh, yeah.
And like Chris was saying, the stigma of Texas wines is still there. And I think a lot of that's due to the retail aspect of Texas wine, which is not very good for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into that, but it is a problem. And I think we're going to fight this from a retail standpoint for years until distributors and retailers, there's a handful of retailers around the state.
Right.
Houston Wine Merchant, for instance, he has a nice selection of Texas wines from a lot of Lewis Wines and William Chris and some other smaller wineries out in the hill country. He actually has a separate Texas section. It's a very small store. But the big box, it's, half that stuff's not even Texas. And that's the problem with the consumer is how they can recognize and know that they're drinking a Texas wine.
Yeah. And you made a good point about, watching the people's faces during their tasting. That's one of my favorite things to do is sit there and, well, first off, I'll tell them, I said, all right, dealer's choice, close the tasting menu. Don't look at the menu anymore. I'm going to pour you wine because I don't want you to read the winemaker's notes because that's a big influence on how you're tasting. Because I don't want you to pour and think you're going to be tasting gravel or, blueberries or whatever. I want you to taste what's on your palate, not what's on in that book. And so it's fun always to pour that. And I don't even tell them what it is either. I don't even tell them what vintage varietal it is. I don't tell them what kind of blend it is. I don't tell them nothing. I just pour it. I let them taste. And then they look at me and like, oh, I like that. You did a really good job at pairing this with what I ate. And then they say, what did I just drink? And I tell them. And then they'll open the book up after they've done all their tastings and they'll read it and they're like, I never tasted any of this stuff. And I said, anytime you go do a tasting, don't read the book, do dealer's choice. And hopefully the person that's pouring you the wine can do exactly what I just did and give you that experience.
I think those are great points. I think as well that one of the things that can really help Texas wine, I think in the retail world, is getting more news out there about Texas wines. I think, when you go to a restaurant and you're looking at a wine list, if you don't recognize the producers, on the list, you're going to kind of default to either a California or maybe a European wine, just because it's the safe bet.
We can't have empty glass.
In your mind, it's kind of the safe bet.
Sacrilege.
So we were thrilled because the Good Texan picked up a double gold at San Francisco Chronicle wine competition. And that was big for us because when you get a double gold in San Francisco Chronicle, they print those double gold wines and they that one we're making sure we're choosing our right glasses.
Here, hang on, I'll smell it. Yeah, this is my glass.
I can always spot my glass because I drink over the same spot all the time. Usually over the logo, because that's how persnickety I can be sometimes. But
it's a good thing that wine is antiseptic, I guess. Right?
Yes, that's right.
Depends on what the alcohol content is.
And that's true. It's true. We're checking right now on the alcohol content.
It's actually pretty low, I think.
Let me get some. Hang on.
That vintage was in the 13s. Yeah, 13.
That's the one thing I like. You do not have to have a high alcohol level for the wine to have big flavors. Some of these California cabs, which is where I started in the wine world, basically was California. They'll push 15%, 15.3, 15.4, and that's cool. And they're big and jammy and stuff like that. But you can get that same flavor and profile out of a wine at something that's in the mid 13s. That's what Bordeaux has been doing for hundreds of years, is 13.5, 13.7, 13.8. They're not big powerhouse wines. They're really balanced, which is what I preach to people when they're drinking wine, is balance. That makes a good bottle of wine.
Yes. And that's 100% guarantee right there every time. If you balance your wine, it'll make a great wine every time. And yes, I like a good high alcohol content wine sometimes because I don't want it burn going down. I want to be able to taste it.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to be left on the floor drinking an alcohol wine. Sometimes you want to have a wine that just makes it through the whole meal and you're still feeling, fresh afterwards. So,
I'm going to tell a little story about myself right quick. It's
story time. We love it.
You can't go back.
I know, that's the bad thing about this.
The internet is forever.
There's been a couple instances where me and a few people, we won't say their names, that used to do the podcast. We'll just leave it at that. And we drank like almost a half a case of wine one night. And then turned around and got up the next day and was at Hilmy drinking wine out of the barrel at 9:00 in the morning. and honestly, I felt great. I mean, I was fine. I was going inside town and getting coffee and pastries for everybody, and everybody's like,
You were having trouble getting Hilmy to aim into your glass as you were leaning to one side.
I was fine. Everybody else was having problems, But wine is such a great little versatile drink. You can take the same, and this is one thing I love about Texas wines, is that you can take the same grape from the same vine, give it to 6 different people, and you will get magic from each one of them, and it's always going to taste different.
You're right, and I think a lot of the magic on winemaking is in the blend. I think that it's very rare in Texas to have 100% varietal wines that hold their own. I think that you can pull off 100% varietal wines in Texas, but I much prefer the magic of blending. I think another fellow winemaker of mine said to me once, would you paint with one color? And I think that really rings true. So when you come to making wine, I think the real magic is in the blend.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that. 100%. And there are some blends out there. And I'm not just going to say Texas blends, but there's blends from all around the world that you just take 2 grapes and you blend them thinking it's something that comes out great, and it doesn't happen properly, and it happens. It's going to happen. You can't make the perfect blend every time, but with a little work, a little studying, understanding chemistry, it eventually get better.
Right.
And with that being said, that's why they started using barrels, right?
Yes, it's true. Yeah. And so the blending is part of that magic. We were at a wine tasting in Napa Valley a few weeks ago, and the tasting room associate was saying, okay, let's try these two cabs side by side, and then we're going to give you the final blended cab. The two cabs were out of two different barrels. And then she gave us the actual final wine that the winemaker made. And she said, let's do an experiment. Let's see if you guys can blend up between these two glasses something similar to what the winemaker came out with at the end. No, we could not. It was our blends were terrible. But the winemaker's blend was fantastic, and it really shows the nuance there where you can take, hundreds of barrels and you can sample through them and, any number of different grape varietals and come up with an incredibly well-balanced wine. So to me, that's really the magic of especially red wine making is blending.
Yeah. I have to commend you with the good Texan. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've got a couple of bottles of these at the house. And I refuse to drink them because they're so good. And I know if I drink it all, there's not going to be another bottle.
No.
We know where you can get more.
Yeah. No problem. Right off my shoulder here is the 23 good Texan ready to be bottled.
I've got a straw in the truck back and fit on that.
I know where the spigot is. We can go right into that.
We are live. We can show it to it. Yeah. But
if the JBC is watching, don't worry. We'll account for it.
Yes.
So it's okay.
This is a fun wine to pour in the tasting room. Usually it's towards the end of our tasting. Right now it's the fourth, and our Reserve Red Flight is the fourth wine we pour. And it's also cool. Sometimes I'll go off the tasting menu and I will pour the 22 High Plains Tempranillo that we have right before I pour the good Texan. And I will tell them, so the same Tempranillo you just had here is now in this bottle, just blended with some other grapes so you can see what it does when you blend. And people love being able to manipulate that kind of thing. It's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I always go off the reservation sometimes when I'm doing a tasting for people based on how they're reacting to the wines. And let's try a little bit of this. I always give them something off the menu and say, here's something that, like the good Texan is a blend, and then here's the Divine Red, which is another Tempranillo blend, to see how it affects the different wines with what's blended into it. That's what's fun.
So I know we haven't opened it yet, but let's go ahead and just talk about it. And I know still got glasses full, so don't. It's not tequila shots.
But it could be.
No. I'm just going to leave it at that. No. Trust me, I had my tequila shots for New Year's Eve. We're not doing those again.
Yeah.
Oh, New Year's Eve, yeah.
So tell us about your cab here that you got.
So we're Cabernet Sauvignon. So cab in Texas is definitely, it's a journey. Cab has to have a long hang time to get to those really ripe cassis flavors and notes, that dark strawberry. And so we've searched for a long time in Texas to find a vineyard that we could work with that can consistently hang that Cabernet Sauvignon the way that we need it. And that vineyard is David Dill's, a family vineyard out in Brownfield. And he does a fantastic job with his cab. He's an extremely good farmer. He farms more than wine grapes, but his vineyard there that he has in Brownfield is very well tended. So that really made a big difference for us because obviously the quality of wine is based on the vineyard itself. We can do a lot on the winery, but if you don't have great grapes to start with, it's just trouble in the winery. So David Dill's fruit, his family vineyard's fruit, is fantastic. Great fruit. So this Cabernet Sauvignon is 98% Cabernet Sauvignon and 2% Petit Verdot. Like Bill said, I love a touch of Petit Verdot in our wines at Eden Hill. I think the Petit Verdot is one of the great red grapes of Texas. It does not have that green unripeness that it would get from its native Europe.
Right.
In Texas, the heat, that high heat that we get just turns Petit Verdot into like caviar in the vineyard. It's dark, it's rich, very jammy. And so it just gives this nice kind of cradle or almost like a foundation to any wine you put it into.
That's all Clone 8 Cabernet too.
Oh, Clone 8.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
That's what he grows in there, which is...
Clone 8's similar to what the clone would be like in Chapelet's vineyard up in Pritchard Hill. Yeah. They've got some Clone 8 up there.
So for our listeners who don't know what Clone 8 is, kind of give her a quick 10-minute spill on that.
Sure, yeah. So clones, your listeners may not know this, but all grapevines are clones of each other. So Cabernet Sauvignon was a chance cross between Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc in a vineyard in France many years ago. And once you find a grape that you like to work with, how do you make a vineyard? Well, you take that grape, you take the seeds, and you bring up a new vineyard based on those seeds. And then from then on, you can actually take that vine and you can take cuttings from that vine and you could plant those prunings in another location. First you grow the roots, then you plant the new vine. So essentially, Cabernet Sauvignon is kind of a clone of itself. All grapevines are like that. Even the Tempranillo that we have sitting out in our vineyard here at Eden Hill is a clone of Tempranillo from Spain. Over time, though, some of those clones just develop certain qualities. Mm-hmm. Some might have more tannin, some might have more fruit, some might have more rustic kind of characters to them. Some have thicker skins. The color might be slightly different. There's just a lot of very small nuances between the clones. And so Clone 8 was a clone that was largely planted in California. It has maybe a little more, I'm not going to say vegetable, I'm going to say it's got a bit more of an herbaceous aroma to it. And so like if you drink like Chapelet from Napa up on Pritchard Hill, you can really detect that kind of Clone 8 in their wine. It has almost like this little bit of eucalyptus, I would say, in the wine.
Interesting.
So when I say vegetal or herbaceous, that's not in a bad way. Mm-hmm. It's actually a very interesting way. That eucalyptus smell or that kind of graphite eucalyptus aroma is unique to that clone.
Right.
And so when David Dill planted his vineyard in Brownfield, we said, you've got Clone 8. That's going to make a really interesting Texas Cabernet because of that little hint of eucalyptus in the aroma to go with that big strawberry jammy fruit that it's also going to have. So a winemaker sometimes is going to look for which clones were planted in which vineyard. And in that way, you can kind of almost choose some style notes in your wines before you even make them. Right. You can say, I want this Clone 8, this vineyard has Clone 7, and so on. And you can actually then even blend those clones together back in the winery once you ferment them.
That's fun and interesting. Honestly, being still very young in my winemaking and understanding vineyards and stuff, I'm not going to lie, I didn't understand the full what Clone 8 was until you just explained it to me. And that's what I love about doing this podcast is I want to help educate people because they don't know. And when they learn, they understand it more and they're like, okay, now I understand the mindset of why you made this wine.
Yeah, I've had some customers even say to me, is cloning, is that like GMO? Is that like genetically modified? No, it's not. It sounds like it was done in a Star Wars lab, where they clone stormtroopers or something.
This is where people, I don't know that people really understand Texas Cab, what their expectations are. Everybody has Napa in their head. That's where Cabernet in America has been just, Cab
Merlot and Pinot Noir.
But Texas Cabs aren't Napa Valley.
Correct.
They're very red fruit dominated, which is something that what I've seen. I mean, I've had a lot of Texas Cabs from different wineries and they're good. Mm-hmm. Some of them are great, but you don't get that heavy black fruit. They're going to be that brighter red fruits, like Chris said, the strawberry and that red currant. Right. Understanding the stuff is half the battle to get people to, when they taste that wine and after you describe it to them in the tasting room, people really love it. Yep. But that's not your atypical Cabernet from a Napa standpoint because of all that red fruit and that little, like I said, that eucalyptus and that little herbaceousness, those pyrazine notes that come out. They soften as the wine opens up. Mm-hmm. And that wine probably ages, 12, 15 years.
Right.
Which is another thing about Texas wines, maybe for another story, but Texas wines will age. If the producer is good, I regularly drink my stuff 8 to 12 years.
And, honestly, talking about aging Texas wines, we know that Texas wines 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago didn't age very well. A lot of people said that Texas wines did not age very well. Now they're starting to age very well. And I'm not going to lie, I actually opened up a bottle of Bob Landon's Texan that was 14 years old. And let me tell you something. That was probably, in fact, it was actually kind of comical. So we opened it up. Anytime I open wine at my house, it's always with friends. It's never by myself. And I open it up. There's 5 of us sitting there, and I pour everybody a glass of it. We finished the bottle off, and we sat right there, and I got to take the first drink, and I sipped it. And when I did that, I turned and looked at everybody, and I said, y'all need to put it back in the bottle. And they said, why? Is it bad? I said, yes. It's so bad that I can't share it with y'all. And then I continued drinking that glass. Let me tell you something. That was probably the most amazing bottle of wine I drank that was that old. I've never drank anything that old ever in wine since I started doing this whole wine stuff. And that was an amazing bottle. That was 14 years old.
Aged Texas wines are a rare thing. So what happens in Texas is because most wineries are very small, there's a demand for your product. And 2 years after bottling, you've got it out into the tasting room and it completely disappears. Right. Yeah. So, and we know that most people, when they buy a bottle of wine, probably 98% of them drink the bottle of wine that night. Very few people actually hold those bottles back to age them.
I've still got early stuff from Pedernales and Inwood and stuff in my cellar just sitting there. 13, 14-year-old temp preserve from Pedernales is still bright and drinking really well.
So when we have a dinner, I'll make dinner if you open a bottle.
We can do that. These things can be arranged.
Some of that handmade pasta.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to throw this out there. So I got some friends of mine who are Hispanic, and I made some carne guisada, so Mexican beef stew. So what I did is I took a chuck roast, quartered it, put it in a big pan, put some olive oil on it, threw a bunch of garlic on it, thinly sliced jalapeno, put it on top of it, and seasoned it with some meat church seasoning on it. And then I put it in the smoker for like 2 hours. Okay. Toward the end of that 2 hours, I went inside and started cutting up all the vegetables and made the roux in my cast iron. And then I went out there and cranked that heat up just a little bit more to get the meat to be a little bit of pink in the middle. Got it done, came inside, had everything done, stuck the meat inside there, and then mixed it with the roux, made the gravy and stuff, and then let it slow cook for like the next 3 hours. And then I turned around and opened up, what did I open up? I opened up a bottle of Tempranillo from Hilmy. And then I opened up a Montepulciano from our friends over here at Square Cloud. And let me tell you something. I've never seen somebody eat so many tacos in my life. he literally said, that tastes just like what my grandmother used to make in Mexico. And
that's a big compliment.
That's a big compliment. Now, he was also 4 bottles in too, so. But we can definitely cook and make some stuff happen.
Oh, yeah. I think maybe a little podcast down the road where we do some vintage, older vintage Texas wine tasting type things. And
I'm okay with that.
We have some nice library wines in our.
I can do that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun to do.
We can arrange that. We can make it happen.
There'd be a lot of surprises, I think.
It would be.
Yeah. So a lot of good things coming from Eden Hill. Lots and lots of good things. And congratulations on your bottles of wine that you got here.
Well, thank you.
I've always loved what you got. In fact, actually, I just finished my Rosé Tempranillo that I got from you last year, or actually 2 years ago, 2023.
That's a rare bottle.
And I really didn't want to open it. But I really wanted a Rosé Tempranillo, and that was the only one in my collection. So I refrigerated it and opened it the next day, and then I regretted it really bad the next day. So it is what it is.
That's true. Look, for the last couple of years, we were experimenting with our Tempranillo Rosé, and it's worked out beautifully. You don't see a lot of Tempranillo Rosés, especially like in the grocery stores. You maybe see like a Pinot Noir Rosé or maybe an Italian Rosé.
Yep.
But the Tempranillo in Texas is beautiful for rosé making.
And yours was a rose gold red. That's and every time I looked at it, it's like that reminds me of rose gold.
Yes. And that's because Tempranillo has a lot of good color in the skins. So even though we whole cluster press our Tempranillo Rosé, it still picks up a fair amount of color from those skins, even just from that light pressing that we do. But that Tempranillo Rosé, that's really important to us. We've really come to love it. Our vineyard here, we're in the middle, sadly, of replanting it. So we're actually tearing the vines out this season. And then this year, we're going to be completely redoing the trellising. We're going to be deep ripping the soil. We're going to be redoing the irrigation. And then in 2026, we're going to replant to Tempranillo so that we can really dedicate that vineyard to Tempranillo Rosé. And we have to do that because the vineyard is close to 20 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And 20 years ago, we only had the knowledge of what we had then, in terms of which rootstock to put the Tempranillo onto, how to treat the soil, things like that. And so we have 20 years new knowledge that we now know much better about how to grow Tempranillo up here in North Texas. And so that vineyard has reached the end of its lifespan here. And so in 2026, it's going to be a whole new vineyard.
So we made no rosé this year, sadly, but next year we have a Tempranillo Rosé coming back, thanks to Mr. Oswald.
Oh,
correct. He's got
actually, I think David Dill. Actually,
David Dill.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna try to do a Tempranillo Rosé from David Dill's vineyard.
I was waiting for that to look like you shouldn't be saying that.
You can edit that out. So, but
we'll leave that. No.
So that was a big thing, being able to come back with a Tempranillo Rosé, because to find somebody that'll harvest it early, is not easy.
Yeah.
So,
you don't want a good.
You've got to pick it at just the right time.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I want to try to do eventually is do the rosé. I think for me personally, in my personal opinion, you got to perfect a red, because if you can perfect a red, you can perfect a white and a rosé. And so my goal right now is to perfect my red making, which I have Alicante Boucher right now.
That's right.
From Ready Vineyards, thanks to Anthony. And then I believe he told me that there's a spot in their vineyard. If you ever looked at the Google map, they've got a small patch of vineyard. It's just Mod Podge of vines. They don't know what they are. And I think he told me that some of those were Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, and Petit Verdot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, our Petit Verdot comes from Ready Vineyard.
Okay. So I've got a small little blend that I'm doing right now of that as well.
Oh, okay.
And so they're going through Mallow right now. And so I'm hoping my Mallow test will come in and tell me where they're at, and then I'll start fixing them up. And I haven't decided if I'm going to leave them. So I actually just purchased some 100-liter tanks. So I'm trying to decide if I want to leave them in the carboys or if I'm going to pump them over and put them into the stainless steel tanks and let them sit there and do clean stainless steel, non-oaked Alicante and this fill blend. Or if I want to take some of it and do oak on it and then not the rest of it.
Well, we're happy to do some bench trials with you if you want to bring them in. Yeah.
I know you would.
Yeah. There may not be a lot of trialing, but there'll be a lot of drinking, I think.
Well, I will say this, and I'm going to give Christy and Andrew from Lonesome Vine a big shout out. They have been a really big help also in my winemaking experience this last year, the last couple of months. And also KK Hartman, I want to give her a big shout out because she gave me my Tempranillo that I just bottled for Christmas Day, which should be ready here in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, Chris McIntosh, and then Grayson over at RK, Grayson Davies, and then, of course, you, Chris.
It's okay. You can put me at the end. It's cool.
But you actually gave me more of the want to do more of the what is it, the Euphora tanks?
Oh, the amphora, clay,
the clay ones. You gave me one to do with that. So I've actually got somebody actually making me some of those right now.
Really, you're gonna some custom built amphora.
Yes,
I think you're really gonna like that.
I want to do that because that's where wine was originally made from.
Yes,
now. Actually, I don't know if you actually saw this article online, but they found a place in China up in the mountains that they cut a hole out in the ground, in the rock, and actually they found remnants of wine inside that hole.
So they were actually just fermenting in the hole.
In the mountain.
I guess, in the mountain.
Yeah, in the mountain. And I'm like, interesting.
We can't really try that here in Texas. There's not many mountains to do that with. But
we can go to Possum Kingdom.
Yes, you could.
Let me see your glass. We'll pour you a little of what we call the Black Label Cab.
Black Label Cab.
Well, there were some names you mentioned there. The Reddys. That's VJ Nikhil Reddy. Yep. They own Ready Vineyards. For those of you from the audience who are wondering, and then Anthony is Anthony Mosley. He's the winemaker for Ready. Anthony is one of the probably one of the most experienced winemakers in Texas. He's been all over making wine in the state.
I love Anthony. Anthony is such a great winemaker, But
he is. He's fantastic.
He
And
cracks
an
me up.
easygoing personality.
He does. But what cracks me up is when I get him on the podcast. It's like this. I can barely hear what
He's very soft-spoken. That's true.
And so every time I talk to him, I'm like, hey, Anthony, can you get close to the microphone? Oh, yeah, I can get to it. And then he gets to it, and then he'll start talking real softly again. And then I have to turn him up some more. I get to a point where I can't turn up anymore because I'm going to start giving feedback. You know?
Most winemakers like to kind of hang back in the barrels and stay in the cellar. They're not really,
But,
the camera types,
Oh, yeah. But, Anthony is a great guy. I mean, he's also,
Yes.
he gave me my Alicante Boucher. He gave me my fill blend that I'm doing. And so I thank him for that as well. Because, I mean, again, the one thing that Rusty from Breaking Bud made a comment about, he said the Texas wine industry is a competition environment. We co-op with each other, help with whatever problem they're having, but we're also in competition. Because, you can have two of the same grapes off the same vine and get two totally different wines.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
From just one day to the next, the vines can take on a completely different chemistry. But that's a good kind of segue,
Yes.
I think, into just what's happening in the industry, the wine industry.
Yes.
We talk about competition.
Well, let's talk about
Things like that.
Let's talk about how 2024 was for the Texas wine industry, and not just Texas wine industry, but even for what's going on.
I think
globally.
the whole wine industry,
Yes.
globally. I would say globally, of course, the wine industry has been down for a few years. It's there's been kind of a shift in drinking styles. People kind of doing low alcohol, no alcohol. There's been kind of a transition between the generations as well. I know that right now in the California wine industry, they're overplanted by about 100,000 acres of vines. And that's hard to comprehend, that many acres.
Well, and let's talk about that. I want your opinion on this. I have my opinions on this. Okay. All right. So a lot of those vineyards, they're pulling up 100 plus year old vines. Okay. So these vines has got personality now. They've been through a lot of wildfires. They've been through the changes of seasons.
Mm.
They've been through a lot of different environmental terroir things. Okay. But they're keeping the 1 and 2 year old vines and pulling up the 100-year-old vines. How do you feel about that?
So that's kind of I think that's a different topic in terms of just the overall wine industry. I think that the struggle right now for those wineries is they need to make a profit.
Right.
And it's difficult for them right now. So when you get a vineyard that's over, say, 30, 40 years old, the chemistry becomes very consistent from year to year, but the crop load is very, very low.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at a vineyard that's maybe producing 1/4 of a ton, maybe 1/2 a ton per acre, and you need that vineyard to produce 4 to 5 tons an acre to even stay in business,
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes more almost like a labor of love that you're keeping those vineyards. So 100-acre vineyard, it's a tough choice for a winemaker and a winery. You're thinking to yourself, I really want to keep this vineyard because of the history of it
Mm-hmm.
and because of everything this vineyard has been through. On the other hand, if I keep this vineyard, I'm going to go out of business.
Right.
And then someone else is going to come along anyway and tear it out.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's fair.
I would rather replant my own vineyard rather than lose my winery.
Right. That's
And-
fair.
Yeah, a lot of
Have someone else
vineyards
do it.
a lot of vineyards in Dry Creek Valley, Russian River Valley that were planted as Zinfandel have been pulled out because Zinfandel is a hard sell to the consumer,
Right.
even though I think they're mesmerizing wines. But you can't sell a bottle of Zinfandel with $75, but you sure can get $75 for a bottle of Pinot, and that's
Right.
what they're planting out there. So
Yeah.
I know one specific vineyard out there that I met the great grandson of the gentleman that planted it in 1925. And that vineyard is still there in the family's name. But there's less and less of that out there. Whether that has to do with the movie Sideways or not, I'm sure there's something to do with that. But, you're seeing Zinfandel, Merlot, stuff like that become less and less planted and made, and you're seeing obviously more Pinot and stuff like that that bring more money. Because like you said, these wineries in the end, especially out there, it's costly to make wine out in California.
Well, and it's because their cost of living is so much higher than what we have here, and so to make one case of wine, it's going to cost them double what it is here. But I guess I can see your point as, again, to me personally, I still wouldn't pull up 100 plus year old vines.
Right.
I mean, that's just me. I mean, when you have something that has personality, yes, people look at me when I say grapes have personality. Well, everything, what's what I'm looking for what is the word I'm looking for? Adapt. Every time a plant always adapts to its environment. And so when it does that, it changes taste, and it changes flavors, it changes everything. So this one year, these one grapevines, the grapes off of this vine right here will taste one way. But the next year, because we had wildfires over here and it took on some of that smoke on there, at least the next year these vines will taste more smoky than previously, That's what I look at. But at the same time, I see it from a standpoint as a financial thing, those are not going to be making money because people are not drinking them no more.
Yeah, and the winery has to stay in business, otherwise that wine goes away. I think those vineyards can survive, but they would need to be part of a larger operation where that small vineyard can stay the way it is, but the winery has plenty of other well-producing vineyards to support it.
Right.
But I think if you're a small business, if you're a small winery and you're making 500, maybe 1,000 cases and your vineyard is 100 years old, I don't know, unless you can charge $500 a bottle. I don't know how you, I don't know how you do it.
I'm just going to say Robert Clay charges $600 for his Sanjo.
That's how you do it. That would be how you accomplish that.
I mean, but in his defense, I mean, the Sanjo he's got was 25 years old.
Yes, and how many bottles of it does he have? Right. So.
And he also ages all of that. So when you open that bottle, you're not having to age it no more yourself.
Okay, sure.
So he does all the bottle aging for you.
Yeah. So he kind of took the hit, carrying that cost for 25 years.
Yes.
And so that's why that wine is there. Yeah.
But let me tell you something. If you want to drink a bottle of $600 wine, that's the man to go get it from.
That's the man. Okay. I've heard about this before. Yeah.
It's actually, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Pretty amazing. I think I had a small little tear come out of the side of my mouth.
That's good. You found a good Texan wine then. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, most definitely. So
there you go.
So,
so kind of back to that conversation then about California and where the industry's going. That's
squirrels all over the place.
Yeah, that's good. The other issue too is that, you look at an acre of Valley Floor in Napa, it's $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 for an acre. That's unplanted. That's just the dirt.
Yes.
To install the vineyard, go through the permitting, you're looking at $500,000 an acre.
Yeah. And do that same here in Texas. What is that?
Do the math, right? Oh, in Texas, if you go out to the high plains, probably $10,000 an acre to buy the ground and plant the vineyard to it.
Yeah.
So the economics are far more feasible in Texas than in California. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of California wineries now coming to Texas.
I was about to say that.
Because they can go other places in Texas. They can plant vineyards. Mm-hmm. They can actually harvest the grapes, refrigerate them, and send them back to California cheaper than they can grow them in California. That's starting to happen.
Yeah. But here's what's crazy.
That's really stunning when you think about it.
It's crazy. When California, they've got so much grapes over there that they're like dime a dozen now, but when you take Texas fruit and you want to ship it to California, it's more expensive.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's premium. It's premium grapes, That's it.
Yeah. So they're kind of working out those economics, and there's actually quite a lot of California wineries now moving to Texas, or at least building part of their operation in Texas and building tasting rooms here and things like that. So that's something that the Texas industry is also having to figure out. How do we work with that?
How can we be, okay, I'm going to say this word and you can hit me off camera. How can we be a little bit more friendly? I know we had this discussion off camera and off recording, and we have our feelings about this, and so we're not going to bash anything. We're going to talk in a friendly manner,
of course.
But I mean, how can we be more friendly to these California wineries that are coming in and taking over and selling California wines and not doing Texas wines? I'm gonna preface this first. Because one of my first wineries I did in Phoenix, one of my few first ones I've done was Serrano. Mm-hmm. They were from Paso. They openly admit from Paso, and they were selling their Paso wines, but they were aggressively planting their own vineyard to be 100% Texas and not relied on Paso, which I commend them for that, because they were trying to get away from the California stuff, and they really love the Texas environment. They love the Texas terroir, and they wanted to support the Texas wine industry, and I commend them for that. But the new winery that came into town is Halter Ranch. And a lot of people were very upset. A lot of the vineyards, a lot of the wineries were very upset about them because they were dumping all this money into media and getting all the attention for themselves, and not saying, hey, drink Texas wine. Oh, by the way, come visit us. And I think that rubbed a lot of people really wrong. And there's some other stuff. We won't talk about the other stuff, the stuff that there's rumor mills going on. We won't talk about factual stuff. I know for myself, every time I opened up Google or opened up Facebook, the first thing I always saw was Halter Ranch is coming to the Hill Country. And it was on every news media outlet. And I'm like, this is crazy. You coming in here into Texas. First off, I wouldn't be coming, if I came to your house, I'm not going to sit there and say, I'm over here at your house. I'm going to do this at your house. I'm going to do this at your house. I'm going to do this at your house. No, I'm going to like, hey, can I do this at your house? Can I do this at your house? I'm going to promote your house before I promote myself. And they rubbed a lot of people wrong. I'm not going to lie. They rubbed a lot of people wrong.
I am going to go to the tasting room now as my shift is starting. It is 1:00.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was that late.
Oh, it's already 1:00?
Yes, it is. So I'm going to, because I'm the lead over there today.
Okay.
So.
Well, the boss is sitting right here.
I know.
I was just going to say.
Is it okay?
Yeah. If you can, if you'd like to stay.
I would.
Yeah.
I will text Neil if they don't need me.
Yeah. Go and text Neil and find out.
Very good. Because I would like to stay in.
We're
Because
getting some really good stuff.
Some heart and soul of
we're getting the
conversation
now.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love the wines, but this is like the heart and soul of it.
Yes.
So this is like a double-edged sword for the Texas wine industry. If I had any advice that I would give to a California winery coming into the Texas wine region, I would say this. Have Texas wines in your tasting room along with your California wines. Mm-hmm. You don't need to hide the fact that your California wines are from California.
Right.
Just be honest with the consumer about it. Consumers will reward you for your honesty.
Correct.
So in your tasting room, have your California wines with your California labels on them. And then right next to that, have your Texas wines with your Texas labels on them. And by Texas wines, I mean wines made from grapes grown in Texas.
What is it? 85%? Has to be 85% Texas?
75, I think.
Yeah, and those percentages are changing based on certain things with the viticultural areas and things like that. But what I would encourage them to do is to put both into their tasting rooms and be honest about it with the consumer.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is the consumer is going to come into your tasting room and they're going to try the California wines. And then they're going to try the Texas wines and they're going to say, wait a minute, the Texas wines are every bit as good as the California wines. And it could be as well, not just that those people are surprised by that, but they learn more about Texas wine, but it could be that there's people that would not even try Texas wines.
Correct.
But they will go into your tasting room because they want a California wine. And that's your chance then to show them, let's try Texas wine along with my California wine.
Yeah.
That is actually, Texans are very adventurous people. We have wine, we have spirits, we have beer, we have all kinds of alcoholic beverages that we make now in the state. And Texans are very open to trying new things.
Right.
I think maybe somehow people think that Texans are going to be closed-minded about when they go out to eat or when they go out to have a good time. No, they're going to be very open-minded. So take that open-mindedness and use that in your tasting room.
Right.
Show them both to your California wines and the Texas wines. Use that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And like I said, be honest with them. The one thing Texans don't like is for you to put
the blinders on us.
Yeah, put a label on your bottle that says Texas on it or something like that. But actually, the wine was made in California.
Right.
Texans don't like that.
Yep. Yeah.
They feel like they've been snowed when you do that.
Bamboozled.
Yeah.
Bamboozled.
There you
I
go.
like
Yes.
that word. I don't know why. I
Oh,
like
okay, bamboozled. So that's the first thing, right?
Or what they could do is, they could take, California grapes and then take a percentage of Texas grapes and make a
Sure, you could do that too. You could make a blend like that if you wanted to promote or market that kind of wine. I guess that's just my first advice to California wineries is, yes, we do want your dollars in the state, obviously. And we do want more wineries in the state because it helps to build a wine culture, which is good for all of us. But what we don't want is dishonesty in the tasting room.
There was when Halter Ranch was coming in to Texas, there was something that came up on one of the wine drinker pages, wine lovers, whatever, and it got into that debate.
Oh man, they got nasty.
And, I'm not gonna lie, I got roasted on that from a couple people because my point was, you stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and worry about what you're doing.
Right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you do that and you continue to make a good product and people are enjoying your tasting room and everything like that, and your business model is going really well, then who cares? I mean, yes, it's funneling money into the state. They're providing jobs and everything like that. So, I mean, we're a welcoming people in Texas, so you're not going to stop it.
Right.
I do think, though, that, and I know there's a point counterpoint. Texas should be 100% Texas fruit. That's my opinion.
I'm with you on that.
However, there's often times where you don't have the grape availability to be able to do that.
Almost impossible.
So that's the point counterpoint.
Yeah.
So, I think labeling, like Chris was talking about, is honesty. I think Texas needs to do a little bit better about labeling. It's got to say Texas on the front label to be a Texas wine.
Yeah.
We know that.
I agree with that.
But it is a dicey situation. What do you do? Texas wineries are not going to California to make wine for obvious reasons, but they are going to come here. And they're coming here from Washington. You've got Covington Hills Cellars in Johnson City. They make some really nice wines, but they're vested in making Texas wines, and they planted a vineyard. So yes, you commend them and you want to see those wineries succeed. Yep. But if I'm going to a Texas tasting room, I'm going into Texas wines. That's my thing.
Well, my last trip I took down to the Hill Country, I was told I need to go to Coordinate Cellars. And
Austin.
And they were mostly a South African winery. And got to talking with them, and he kind of actually helped me change my feelings about being 100% Texas. Because if you're coming in and you want to start a winery up, sometimes getting the wines for Texas is kind of hard to get started. You got to find the custom crush facilities like Sage Vintage, or you got to find Kerrville Hills, and then you've got to get in at the beginning of the season. You can't come in the middle of the season, so it's really hard to get started. And so, and I can't remember their names, but they have a tasting room there in High, and they have a tasting room in Fredericksburg.
It's a guy named Austin, if I remember correctly.
Austin, yes. And he said that he wants to do Texas wines. He loves Texas wines. And he says, I just could not financially get started in it right away. So he knew about brokeraging South African wines. And I'm like, okay, this is fair. I can handle this, because you're trying to start out. And in fact, actually, when you pull into his tasting room in High, I think it was, he has like a half acre vineyard right there in front, and that they were fixing to harvest that year for the very first time. So I'm like, okay. And then he said he got grapes coming in from, I believe he said the High Plains also. So I get that, and if that's what Halter Ranch is doing, okay, I'm 100% on board with that. Come in, bring your California wine in, but let's get you some Texas wines on your board as well. So, I want people to come in. I want people to try different stuff, because they're going to taste wine from South Africa. They're going to taste wine from Washington. They're going to taste wine from California, yada, yada, yada. And then they're going to turn around and try something from Texas. And they're going to say, wow, this Texas wine can hold up and compete to X.
Right.
Yes, and you get to meet the producer, and you can actually walk through the vineyard.
Yep.
You can actually visit the winery, see the winemaker, talk to the winemaker.
Yes.
There have been so many times when I've traveled to other wine regions outside of Texas where I never get to meet anybody. I never get to meet the winemaker. They've got me in a room someplace, and even some of the people don't even really know much about the wine that I'm talking to. And so the great thing about Texas is that because the wineries are smaller, you actually get to meet the people that make the wines.
I was literally going to make that comment.
Yeah. That's one of the things. That's one of the unique things that I also want to say about this issue is that Texas has still a lot of camaraderie between the wineries. It is not really that way so much anymore outside of Texas, especially on the West Coast. There's pockets of it, sure, but it's very competitive now on the West Coast. It's very competitive. And I don't want Texas to lose that camaraderie between the wineries. We have the North Texas Winery Association up here in North Texas. It represents, 40 plus wineries. There's the Texas Hill Country winery group. There's other winery groups around the state. I really want to encourage Texas to keep that camaraderie.
Oh, yes.
Because I've seen it gone in the opposite direction in other places, and it's just dog eat dog.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you'll see that happen in Texas because of the mindset of the people in Texas. I mean, I'm from New York, and I've been down here 40 years, and I tell people that, yes, there's the New York state of mind. I still have a little bit of that. But Texas has a mindset that's just, we're proud people here in Texas, and they like their Texas wines, and they will support the industry. And I think that you're always going to have that, like Chris says, that camaraderie. I don't think that'll ever wane in the state of Texas. It's a different animal.
One of the things that I hear a lot in the tasting room is people say, oh, I went to Napa and I went to the tasting room here and I sat down in the tasting room and I got to look at the vineyard. I was like, did you get to take a tour of the vineyard? They said, no, we couldn't do that. And I'm like, okay, did you get to talk to the winemaker? Oh, no, he was gone somewhere else. and I'm like, so you talked to the tasting room attendants? And they're like, yes. I said, let me tell you something about Texas then. I said, majority of the tasting rooms here in Texas, with the slide of a few larger ones, you can go to the tasting room and there's a very good chance you're going to be talking to the winemaker. Very good chance. Unless it's during production season, then the chances are zero. It ain't happening. I said, but there's a very good chance outside of production season. And then they will say, when is production season? And I'll say, well, it's usually from January till about October, August, somewhere in there. And they're like, oh, okay. And I said, but you go in there, there's a good chance you're going to talk to the winemaker. And there's a good chance a lot of them will take you into the production room, give you a tour of the production room so you can see what it's like for making wine. I said, I'm not saying that all California wineries won't do that, but I'm just saying here in Texas, there's a very good chance that will happen.
Right. And I'd like to say this too, that there's something happening right now between the West Coast and the Texas wine region where they're going like this. And that is on the West Coast, because it does take $500,000 to plant an acre and grow it up and make wine from it. I hope you like Chardonnay. I hope you like Cabernet, because that's what you're going to get. And because that's the only, the grapes that can demand that price per bottle, that's what you have to plant.
Right.
It's almost like this self-selecting process happening now on the West Coast, And so I met with several winemakers when I was in Napa, one of which was Gustavo Brambilla. Had a great time with him. We were talking about it before the show here. And we were just talking about how the main differences now between a new wine region like Texas and an older wine region like the West Coast is that Texas has this chance right now to experiment. And Texas, because of its climate, because it is different than the West Coast, it also means it can grow different wine grapes than what you would see on the West Coast that would appeal to a lot of people, a lot of the newer generations. In Texas, because of our climate, we can do a wonderful job with Italian and Spanish varietals, Southern French varietals. So there's nearly every kind of Italian and Spanish grape you can think of right now being planted and being made wine from in Texas. And that's one of the strengths of Texas is that you can walk into a tasting room and get a Tempranillo or a Sangiovese, or you can get a Montepulciano, you can get Negro Amaro, you can get a Vermentino or an Albarino. You can get an Alicante Bouchette or something like that. I mean, there's all kinds of different grapes that maybe you've never even tried before you're able to walk into a Texas tasting room and try something like those, something completely different than Chardonnay and Cabernet.
You know, one of my favorite things to do in the tasting room, and this makes me smile every time this happens, okay? People come in and they're like, I want to do a tasting. I'm like, okay, what do you like to, what is your go-to? You know, those are the top 3 wines they always say: Pinot Noir, Merlot, or Cab Sauv. Yeah. And then I turn around and I tell them, not today, they're not. And the look on their face are like, who are you to tell me what I'm drinking today? But I tell them, I said, explore. I said, yes. You're coming into a tasting room. They've got all these different great wines. Explore. Try something new. You may find something that you've never tried before. And so they're like, okay, well, what do you have? And that's where I go in and I ask them, what did you eat? And then I start pairing with what they had previously, you know? And like one of the top ones that people like right now is the Toronto that Bob blended. Yeah. And when people say, oh, I like Merlot or Cab Sauv.
Bingham makes a great Toronto.
Yes, I know.
So I do. Here's a question. So if somebody says Pinot to you, what's the first grape that comes out of your mind to say, oh, if you like Pinot, then you're going to like this?
Usually when someone says Pinot, I usually gravitate immediately to like a Petit Verdot or even a Tannat. Even though it's a darker, bolder, people tend to only like stuff they've grown up drinking, if that makes sense. Because if you've always been drinking Pinot Noir, your palate is used to that, and you've not explored anything deeper and more I want to say obtrusive, but more advanced. Let's use the word advanced, okay? So I give them a Petit Verdot, I give them a Tannat, or even a Meritage. I'll even do a Rotbang Meritage, and when they drink it, they're like, I've been missing out. And I was like, well, it's because you've been drinking something really light. Actually, to be really honest, I call Pinot Noir and Pinot Grigio the training wheels of wine. Well, I mean, Pinot Noir and Pinot Grigio are really basic wines. Not heavy dry, not very acidic, just very basics.
I can see how the bodies wouldn't be as heavy.
Yeah. And so people, who just start drinking out wines like to drink that stuff. I want them to get excited. I want them to try.
I want that excitement too. Yeah. And so like when I was having a tasting with Gustavo, by the way, for your audience, so Gustavo Brambilla, he was actually played by an actor in the movie Bottle Shock. So when you watch the movie Bottle Shock and you hear the character's name Gustavo, that was Gustavo Brambilla, and you can actually go to his tasting room in downtown Napa and see him. He's like one of the few Napa Valley winemakers you can actually just book an appointment with and have a tasting with him. It's great. He can kind of give you the whole story of the Paris tasting and all those things that happened during that time. Well, anyway, so he was pouring us his Barbera.
Yeah.
And I was like, finally, something else besides a Chardonnay, And he's like, yeah, I get this Barbera from this other part of the county, that kind of thing. And it was fantastic. I mean, it was one of the best Barberas I've ever had. Yeah. And I'm thinking it was almost like a tear in my eye. I'm like, because in about 10 years, this vineyard's probably going to get ripped out and planted to, something else that, is a higher price per bottle. Right. And so he was having us try his Barbera because he was like, one of the great sweet spots that Texas has is that you can grow Barbera in Texas. You can make a great Barbera in Texas. You have all these other great varieties that you can do in Texas now that we really can't do anymore in California because of economics.
Right. And, and I'll tell you right now, one winery that I know of that does Barbera is Edge of the Lake.
Yes.
And he has a great Barbera.
Yeah.
Great.
And by the way, guys, when we say KK Hartman, we were talking about her in the previous in the show. KK is her nickname. Her first name is actually Krista, but you can call her KK. She's fine with that. Yeah, if you're just looking her up on the internet, it's Krista Hartman.
Or Red River Provisions.
Red River Provisions, yes.
We have a wine club member here that has a winery out in Mendocino. He's North Coast. Okay. And he literally planted Alianico in his vineyard because of the Alianico that Chris makes. He loves Alianico. So I'm going to try it out here. So
Alianico is okay. First off,
it's an unsung hero in Texas, man. The barbecue, when you have it with barbecue, it's just like,
why did you just do that
made to go with barbecue?
Like literally, I was trying not to think about barbecue and you said that. Now
wait a minute. What's your favorite barbecue joint though?
It's called the Will Donahue
Will Donahue.
Yeah.
Will Don. Okay, Will Donahue.
We haven't been there, have we?
I've not been to Will. Have you been to Will
No,
Donahue?
I've not.
Are you trying to say that I need to cook for y'all? Because I mean,
We keep reverting back to this, so something's going to happen.
You know what? Let's figure something out. I make some of these best freaking ribs. Like my dad is very. I know this is sidetracked.
Oh, really?
This,
Yeah.
but
Okay. Now wait a minute. Now I've got a friend named Mark Sharon who lives up here in North Texas. He doesn't have a store, but I'm telling you, that guy's barbecue is the best I've ever had.
I'm just going to talk about my ribs. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about.
Ribs.
Just ribs. Okay, my dad is very particular about his ribs. There was one barbecue place he would eat ribs from, and he will never eat it from anywhere else. For Father's Day one year, I made 5 racks of ribs for Father's Day, and he devoured 1.5 racks by himself. And I looked at him and I said, I guess you hate my ribs. And he goes, yeah, I hate them so much. I'm going to take this other rack over here and eat them. But I'm just going to give you the little secret about my ribs, and it's called butter. And when I say butter, I'm actually literally mean butter. Butter is the key to it. And it takes about 4 hours to cook my ribs. And it's lip smacking good. I mean, you know what? You've heard the term slap your mama good. These are slap your mama good.
We should definitely get together and make some barbecue.
I have no problem.
We'll get my friend Mark Sharon over, man. We'll get a smoker going, and
you know what? I will load up my smoker over here, and I'll bring it out here, and we will fire it up, and we'll make some ribs and pour some wine. And
by the way, you're right. Anthony Bourdain said that what makes restaurant food great? Butter. Yeah, it's the key ingredient.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Well, so Ionico, a Southern Italian grape, hard to pronounce, I know, because it has like this G in it, but you don't pronounce the G. When the Italians get going really fast, they just say Ionico. They start leaving out a whole lot of letters. But it's this beautiful wine. It's got like this dried plum flavor with like this black pepper kind of finish. Mm-hmm. And man, when you have that with like some burnt ends from brisket. Oh man. Or you get some good ribs going. Oh yeah, and it was just made for it. So I mean, I have not been to Italy. I do want to go to Italy.
Yeah, I know, right?
But I don't know if they have I'm sure they don't have a barbecue culture in
Probably
Italy.
Not.
But man, if ever there was,
they do a lot of smoke, open grilled pork in Italy, especially.
Yeah. But it's not the barbecue like we know here.
No, because their food is so regional. Yeah. From, if you're in Tuscany, rabbit is a big thing. If you're in Umbria, it's pork. So, but Ionico, interesting is one thing that Texas has done for me. I've been in the industry since 2013. Started drinking Texas wine around 2011. Mm-hmm. Texas was my introduction to rosé, Ionico, Montepulciano. I'd never had these wines really ever before. If I did, I didn't know about it. Right. So as I advanced in this industry over the years and my wine clubs I've had, I wound up with a cellar that has about 600 bottles of wine in it. And about 2/3 to 80% of it is Texas. Right. That's pretty much what I drink on a regular basis. And I go back and it's always Montepulciano, Tempranillo blends, but I love the Viognier too. That was the other grape that I got into in Texas, and I'm a big Viognier fan. So it was interesting that my introduction to a lot of grapes from around the world was because of what they were making in Texas. And that's something that, like you said, in California, it's going to be Cabernet, Meritage blends, Chardonnay, and Pinot, but that's what you're going to get. But in Texas, there's so many, even though we don't have a lot of different grapes planted in this state, we have a very varied industry on what we make. And that's really cool.
So with that being said, Sandy Rhodes.
Nice.
He's making a wine right now that he is the only winery in the United States growing this grape. And if you ask me to enunciate it, it ain't happening. So if you're better at English than I am, there is the
Prieto
Percudo.
Yes. And it was actually at the Lone Star wine competition. And they had brought it out with a whole bunch of other Pinot Noirs because it was the only one that had this. And I looked at it and I said, that's not a Pinot Noir. I mean, you could just see it, but it had a few characteristics of a Pinot. And I'm like, what is this? So I took a picture of the number and stuff like that so I can find it later on. And I drank it and I'm like, holy crap, what is this? And so when they pulled the cover back from the Lone Star and we got to go look at the wines and stuff, I saw that and I fell in love with it. And every time I would go down there at Sandy Roads, they're closed because, I mean, I was off time, or they were having a party of some sort, a private party, so I couldn't buy anything. So I'm hoping they're listening to this episode, and hopefully I can get a bottle before it sells out, because it's a members only bottle.
Yeah. I hope he's encouraged by this episode too, because I do want to say to my fellow winemakers in Texas, that I feel that's the future for Texas moving forward, is experimenting and making wine from all these other grapes that you don't see on like the West Coast and other places. Even my wine professors, when I was I went to Grayson College to get my winemaking and viticulture training, and sorry, as I see something, that's okay. And so one of my wine teachers there said, we're really worried that a lot of grape varieties are going to go extinct. I mean, there's close to 3,000 wine grape varietals in the world, and people drink like 5 of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
All because they've just never been exposed or never had the chance to drink these other varietals. Well, here in Texas is a place where they can finally do that.
Yes.
And so I want to encourage my fellow Texas winemakers. That's, for me, that is one of the roads forward for the Texas wine industry, is making wine from these Italian and Spanish and Southern French varietals that are, though they are old European vines, they're wines that are new to people.
Right.
That's the sweet spot, I feel, going forward for the Texas industry.
Well, the one grape that I'm happy to see starting to pop up is Graciano.
Oh, Graciano is so good.
And I know, more props to KK up there at Red River. Is she actually, I think, just bottled her estate Graciano.
Graciano's so good. And Carry-On's another one that's coming up also. But I think it's more, I've had it as a single varietal, and I don't think it's really all that great as a single varietal. But when you mix it with something, blend it with something, it's
a good
really
blender.
Good.
It does make a good straight varietal. The problem with Carignan is it's such a small cluster packed real tight.
Right.
I think ripening is an issue with getting that thing really ripe. But if you go to like southern Spain or, in there where they actually do straight Carignana, their wines are amazing, but you got to like tannins.
Yeah.
You better like tannins.
Well, you're right though. We as in Texas, viticulture, we need to start looking at other varietals out there that's available that we should be able to grow here. I mean, if we can't grow it here in North Texas, we should be able to grow it in the high plains. If we can't do it in the high plains, we should be able to do it in far West Texas, out the Davis Mountains areas. If we can't do it there, we got the hill countries. And if we can't do it there, we got East Texas. Notice I said East Texas last. Because there's a lot of humidity there, a lot of water going on there.
But that's really just a matter of just choosing the right varietals to grow.
I know, though, and there was a winery over in East Texas that did traditional Bordeaux-style wines, Italian-style wines from fruit grown in that area. It's no longer in business anymore, sadly. It made some seriously good wines. But you can grow that stuff. I don't know what she was doing, but talking about Pellegrina, which is no longer in business, but man, her wines were just amazing.
You can grow anything here in Texas.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, us Texans are so hard-headed that we will find a way to make it grow here.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe.
I mean, we'll go out there and beat the vine every day, and you're going to grow. But we will make anything.
We're determined.
Grow. We're determined. We're stubborn. We're bullheaded, as they would say. We're going to make it grow here in Texas. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so Texas proud, is because, I mean, when they tell us you can't do that, first thing that comes out of my mouth, hold my beer and watch.
Yeah. That's it.
But
the resiliencies of Texans, that's what people, when you go to, I tell people this all the time, Texans go over to Europe and go over to other parts of the country. They tell them, I'm from Texas. So they get a kick out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that really cracks me up, and I love telling this story, is about TV Munson and how Texas single-handedly saved the wine industry globally. And they look at me like, what? And then,
there's statues to TV Munson in France.
Yeah. And I would tell
with this cowboy hat.
Yes. Yeah. And I would tell them the story, and they're like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." He came over here and he got Texas rootstock and sent it over there, and he was able to save a lot of vines.
Yes.
Then one of the other biggest things that always cracks me up, and why they don't guess this, is I tell them, of all the 50 states in the United States, which one started making wine first? I mean, come on. I mean, that's an easy answer one. And because obviously we're talking about Texas wines and stuff. And I ask them this question, and they look at me like, California. And then I'm like, we're in Texas and we're talking about Texas wines. You should have answered Texas on that. And then when I explained to them about mission grapes and all of that kind of stuff, they look at me and they're fascinated. And I tell them that, yes, Texas didn't start growing grapes and making wine before California as a profitable thing. But we started growing grapes and making wine long before anybody else has. And we saved the world. So you could have your grapes over in California.
Right.
It is, yeah. So Texas does span, yes, all those regions. As a matter of fact, the Burgundy was the last region in France to give in to grafting its vines onto like a Texas rootstock.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always comical. It's always fun to talk about that,
Right.
and tell people that because they don't understand that.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing here. Like when we replant in 2026, we're going to replant our Tempranillo onto a different rootstock, but that rootstock is still based from Texas vines. It's still a hybrid of Texas vines.
See, that's what I like right there. That's what I like. So so I guess to kind of tie off the talk about the industry, that's really where it's going to go. I think with Texas, I think it's important for it to think about finding its sweet spot with growing grapes that maybe not a lot of people have heard of, but they grow great in our climate, and that Texas can call its own. So let's talk about real quick how well 2024 was for growing grapes. I will say, for me, from what I have seen in the vineyards, that we had that lot of rain in the early spring that forced a lot of growth that happened. We didn't have that late frost, so that helped with bud breaks. We didn't lose a lot of bud breaks this year. And then during the summertime, we had those big, amazing clusters, beautiful clusters. And I know I'm going to say this from harvesting out at RK and working out in the vineyard out there. The vines, like literally, I can do off a couple of vines and then come back the next week. And those same vines I just cleared off last week, I got to redo them again. Oh, yeah. They were growing worse than a 5-year-old child's hair. Okay. Oh, yeah. And the clusters that we were pulling off, I heard from multiple places, this year's growth of grapes was astronomical from last year and then the year before that. In fact, actually, they said this was the best year in 5 years.
Bumper crop.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. I started realizing this a few years ago, and it was my years at Total Wine that started me thinking about this. If you go look at Bordeaux and you look at Texas, match the vintages. Mm-hmm. Every time Bordeaux has a banner year, so does Texas. Started about the early part of the last decade, but you look at 2015, 2016, 2018, fabulous years in Bordeaux, fabulous years with Texas fruit. So our climate, I don't know, it's a different climate, but there's something about it that kind of makes you wonder that we're pretty close to what they do, which is my argument about aging your Texas wines. Right. They need to be treated a lot like Left Bank Bordeaux in some instances. Right. And if you can do it, like we talked about, is gets sold young, gets drank young. If you can age your Texas stuff, you'll be mesmerized at how good they can be in 6, 8, 9 years.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, the quality of Texas wine is, I would say that the flavors, the blends, they're almost like halfway between French and California wines. And you're right, because Bordeaux sometimes has some pretty tough weather patterns.
Yep. 2013 was terrible. That was the year of the freeze in Texas, which virtually no fruit was harvested out of the high plains because of 27 degrees on like May 2nd or something like that.
It's crazy.
And then you get the polar vortex year, which, so we get that 1 or 2 years a decade that really throw things out of whack here in Texas. And the one cool thing, though, about Texas, which is different than what California has, is the weather and things. Every year, the Texas wines drink a little different. Yep. Some years better than others. And most Texas wineries don't engineer their wines.
I was literally fixing to make that comment.
That's the thing. It's a comforting thing when you can go to a wine every year and it's going to be about the same, some years better, but that gets boring to me after a while. Yes. And the cool thing is you wait to see, oh man, that Montepulciano was great. Like we have this 21 Monte, which is light and it's fresh and it's got this brightness about it, high acid, really nice wine. Well, the 24 Montepulciano here was so ripe. It's in the tanks over there, probably somewhere around 15.5%. It's going to be a beast of a wine. And I'm sitting here waiting for this, because I help process that stuff. So I'm sitting here waiting, let's say another 18 months to go about when this gets bottled. And that's what's really exciting about the industry in Texas is every year you're going to get thrown a different kind of wine, even though it's from the same winery, same winemaker. But this is the fun thing about wine and why it's different every year. And you pour it in a glass and you start thinking about, what was that? That was a hot summer that year. Yeah, you can tell it's been hot. And so that's the fun part about it.
I like how you brought that up, because one of the things that I tell a lot of people when they drink California wines is like a lot of the winemakers there in California, they have a recipe for their wine.
Right.
And they break it down completely to the molecular level, and then they bring it back up. And it's always the same. I said, you can go out there and get a 2017, 2018, 2019, all the way up to a 2022, and I guarantee you it will taste the same.
Yeah.
But you come to Texas and you get the same varietal and you do it the same years, I guarantee you every year you can taste the difference in the terroir that happened that year, because you can taste it every time. Because we don't want to break it down so far that it destroys the taste. It destroys the structure of that wine. We want you to taste what we felt that year. So if it was 9,000 degrees outside, we want you to taste in that bottle.
So there's a little West Texas dirt on the nose of this Black Label cab that stays in the glass. It's really cool.
Yeah,
you get that, and it's going back and building varietals and stuff. I have a lot of stuff, like especially with Montepulcianos, where I've been drinking them from the same winery for 12 years. 14, 15, 16. I can see the differences in them, and that's what wine's about. It should be different every year and should be exciting.
Yeah, it should be like a new Christmas gift every year.
And when a winemaker can make something really good out of a tough vintage, that's another thing that, and you don't get a lot of that out of, not that there's anything wrong with it. You like Silver Oak wines. I've been drinking that wine for 30 years. You can go back to it every year. It's going to taste the same. If that's what you like to drink, that's fine. But it gets, like I said, it gets boring after a while to constantly drink the same thing.
You need some excitement in your life.
Yeah.
As a winemaker, I could take a little less excitement sometimes.
Yeah.
But I understand. I agree with Bill on that. That's one of the unique things about Texas, is you get this vintage to vintage variation. Yeah. And that's really what makes it exciting.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's many wine regions in the world where you get that. You drink Australian wines, they're pretty unilaterally the same every year. You go to Portugal and Spain, you're going to get just about the same thing every year. But I think Texas, that's one thing unique we have here, is Mother Nature's going to throw a slider in the dirt at you every now and again, and you have to decide how you're going to combat that. Are you going to force your wines into something they don't want to be from the grapes? Or are you going to just take that path and say, okay, these grapes they're not going to be this or that, so I've got to take them in this direction. So that's really cool.
And I definitely love that about Texas winemakers, because they'll look at what we got out there and like, well, I was going to make that. Well, now I have to go make this now. And I don't know about you, Chris, but one thing that I've learned working out in the vineyard at Arcade with Amy and Grayson is I would take some grapes, and during the season while, trimming vines and pruning and stuff, I would taste the grapes, just to see how they were progressing. And by the time we got ready to harvest, they actually tasted completely different from when they first started veraison, like completely day and night. And so I sat there and I was wondering how's Grayson going to take these wines? How is he going to take this and to make it into his own little signature stuff? And I like watching him. Grayson, I love you, brother. I sat there one day and I was asking about the chemistry. And if I start talking IT stuff with you, you're going to glass over really fast.
No, it's okay. My career was in internet marketing.
Okay. Well, if I talk to you in IT, you're going to glass over on that.
I am going to do that.
And so when I started talking the chemistry with Grayson, I glassed over and I'm like, honestly, I give you the best image. You ever seen the Simpsons where Homer's got that monkey with the cymbals crashing up there? I felt like that. I was like, I have no clue what he just said. And then it was like 3 or 4 days later, it finally just like I wake up and I'm like, oh, I understand now what he's talking about.
That sinks in.
It made sense. And so that's the one thing I love about the Texas wine industry, because you have to sit there and you're like, okay, my grape is not what I want it to be. I'm going to turn it into this, you know.
That's what a winemaker from California I was talking to said. There's no bad grapes in California. There's just bad winemakers. So it's kind of the flip, the opposite.
What was the saying is you can make good wine from bad grapes, but you can't make a good wine from a bad winemaker?
That sounds about right. Yeah. So Texas winemakers they're tough. They've been through it all. We've been through freeze, hail. There was a tornado that came through last year.
Yeah, May 29th.
KK's property. Yeah.
Missed us by maybe a mile.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Y'all got that here, but that hit that Valley View. But the year before that one, it hit KK's property
right.
and their vineyard.
So Texas winemakers have to go through a lot, but that actually makes you a very experienced and resilient winemaker too. Like it makes you fearless in a way. Yeah. It also means that with that kind of experience, you're able to make good wine year after year, no matter what Mother Nature throws at you.
Oh yeah. But I'm going to throw this out here. I'm going to throw this question to y'all, and I want y'all to tell me what y'all think the answer is, okay? How many acres is currently under vine in Texas right now?
I'm going to say somewhere around 5850.
I was going to say in the 5,000s as well.
According to A&M, 10,000.
10,000?
Really?
And that was of last year.
Huh. Okay. Now that's a surprise to me. Yeah. I thought it was in the 5,000.
I thought it was 5,000 or 6,000 myself. And I was looking that up and because I knew the topic we were talking about here.
Yeah,
and I wanted to boast Texas stuff. And so when I saw that, I was like, we have 10,000 under vine right now? That's insane.
If I'm correct about this, that would put us beyond New York now.
Yeah.
That would make us number 4.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Even though some articles, I mean, it's funny when you read stuff. I keep switching the cameras to the wrong people. But it's kind of interesting reading online and how they list us, Texas, in grape growing regions. And in some articles, especially if you hit like the West Coast, they put us at 5, 6, or 7. If you read over the East Coast side, they put us at like 3, 4, and 5.
Of course, they don't want to lose their position.
So it's kind of funny reading this and seeing where we're placed at.
But isn't that interesting though? Because I see so many articles about Virginia wines, East Coast wines, New York wines, Long Island, Finger Lakes.
But you know, one thing I hear about is people come here and like, your wines are so much better than where we're at. I mean, I said, where y'all at? They said, oh, we're cool. Virginia, we're from New Hampshire, we're from New York. And I'm like, that's Texas for you. And then I'll pop my collar a little.
There you go.
I guess maybe that's because I think most Texas wines are drank in Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, we ship to all 50 states and we're shipping right now.
Yeah.
But
I like you brought that up. I actually read this article, and this is from last year as well. Texas is now starting to distribute more wines outside of the borders of Texas now than we ever have.
Yeah.
And actually, Michael McClendon actually told me this the other day when we was out at Sage, that he's actually making wines for several other states right now using Texas fruit.
So he's actually taking Texas fruit to other states. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of what we were talking about before about there's some California wineries coming in, planting Texas vineyards and actually shipping the grapes back. And that's can sometimes be cheaper than
he's actually making the wine here in Texas.
Yeah. Oh,
at Sage.
Okay.
He's making the wine and shipping the wine off to the new places.
Off to into
other states and all like that.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah.
Is that not awesome or what?
That is, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, if you've never gone and hung out with Michael McClendon,
he's a hoot.
Oh my gosh,
I'd like to sometime. Yeah.
We got there because he lives. They're in Nacogdoches, right down the road from my parents' house, and we get there and they open up a bottle of sparkling right away, and I swear that was a 6-foot fountain that came off that bottle. and they had a black Spanish sparkling.
Oh, I'd like to try that.
I'm trying to think. It's actually, there was a vineyard there. I think it was called Rusty Spur there in East Texas.
Rustic Spur.
Not Rustic Spur.
No, Rusty Spur.
Because Rustic is in Fredericksburg.
Right.
This one's over in East Texas. Rusty Spur.
Yeah.
And they had black Spanish sparkling. And I'm like, holy cow.
You can do some really interesting things with black Spanish. Like I know Hack does his Madeira, his black Spanish Madeira.
So
with that,
one of the new wineries that opened up in East Texas called Huntsman. They have a black Spanish that, holy crap, it is so jammy. I'm like, man, I need a piece of bread now with some butter on it.
Years ago, when I was working at Inwood, Dan used to make the wines for Vineyard at Florence. And he actually, what he told me the best way to handle black Spanish was that he actually does it in a Repaso style.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He doesn't make it anymore, but that's what to get the funk out of it, kind of, it's got that pruny, funky skin, he did it as a Repaso, and it was actually pretty tasty, but.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have to try that out. So, Chris, we know more about you today. That I found out, for whatever reason, I don't know why I did not know this, is that you are the president of the Drink North Texas Association.
Yeah, the North Texas Winery Association.
North Texas Wine
That's okay.
Association.
No, the Drink North Texas is one of our big festivals.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about last year, how last year went.
Sure.
And the Gainesville, how successful that was. And then let's talk about the future, what's coming up for this year.
That's a great topic. So the North Texas Winery Association is an association of 40 plus wineries up here in the North Texas region. And how I was talking before about how I don't want Texas to lose its camaraderie between its wineries.
Yep.
That was one of the reasons why we started that association, because we wanted to see the wineries in North Texas band together and create wine tourism, almost like a wine country region right here, just for those people from DFW all the way to the Red River. It's such a unique area because of the 4 forks of the Trinity River Valley that kind of thread through the area. That deposits almost like 4 different soil types. And so when you plant vineyards here, when you're making wine in North Texas, it's a very unique kind of ecological region because of that. And we wanted to see those wineries really come together because there's almost between 7 and 8 million people now in DFW.
I know, it's crazy.
It's a massive amount of folks. And Dallas-Fort Worth is actually one of the number 1 wine markets in the country.
Really?
I think it might actually be larger than Chicago now, if I'm not wrong about that.
Okay, so when you say that, you're referring to because we know that the Hill Country is like number 2 on the most visited.
Yeah, that's like for like wine trails or like people.
Gotcha.
We're talking about driving to a wine region. We're talking about just consumption, restaurant sales.
Gotcha. Okay.
Bottle of wine sales, total wine, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a lot of California wineries, DFW is like their number 1 market.
Oh yeah, I talked to a lot of people from California a lot of times.
Yeah, and so we recognize how special this region is, and so we wanted the folks in North Texas to realize that there's great wineries in their backyard.
Yes,
and so we created this association. We do 3 trails a year. We have a Valentines Day wine trail, we have a spring wine trail, a fall wine trail. But along with that, though, we also have 2 main festivals now throughout the year. One is the Gainesville Wine Festival. It's in the fall in the city of Gainesville up here. Gainesville's on track to kind of become the heart of the North Texas wine country. They're putting a lot of investment into the wine region. Gainesville is doing a big festival now called the Wine and Country Festival. It was our first one this year, but it's going to get larger and larger each year. It combines wine with country music. So 2 great things up here in North Texas for people to do. And that's in Gainesville. So it's just right up Interstate 35, just north of Denton. Yep. Right, up 35. And then the second big festival we're going to be doing is called Drink North Texas. And so for the first time this year, that's going to be in the spring, and it's going to be held at the Frontiers of Flight Museum at the Dallas Love Airport. So it's all indoors. You don't have to worry about, your tent being blown halfway across the county. We've chased, how many of us have chased our tents across the counties for those festivals in the spring, especially, right, yes, with all the wild weather. But the great thing about that festival is that you get to not only drink wine from, say, 12 to 15 wineries that are going to be inside the museum, but we actually get the run of the museum. We actually rented the museum out for the day. And while you're drinking your wine, you get to tour the aircraft. The museum actually has an F-18 Super Hornet. It actually has one of the capsules from the Apollo program. You can actually see the scorch marks on it from when it re-entered the atmosphere.
That's awesome.
And so you get to taste wine. We're going to have, vendors there. We're going to have food as well. But the great thing, of course, is just you get to see all these incredible aircraft.
Right.
They have a full-scale model of the Wright brothers Flyer, the original, Flyer. Not the one from the Smithsonian, but it's a model of it.
When I look at that thing, I'm kind of curious how scary were they when that thing finally took off ground.
I mean, talk about courage, right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, we've all seen the movie, The McKinney Hawk doing it,
yes.
But when you see it in person at the Frontier Flight Museum, you're just in shock. You're like, okay, these guys had some serious courage to get on that thing and just say, I'm going for this.
And laying down while doing it too at that,
Yes, right. And they laid down, yes. So it's going to be the first time we have our festival in that museum. It's going to be a great location because if you can actually fly into Dallas Love Airport and take a shuttle from the concourse directly to the museum and not even have to park if you wanted to. But of course, I mean, because it's an airport, there's great parking around it anyway. Yep. So we're extremely excited about that. But it means a lot to us because we started out that association with maybe 10 wineries, actually less than that. I think maybe just like 4 or 5, just a handful. And we pulled it together thinking, are we ever really going to be the size of like the Texas Hill Country Wine Trail? And slowly but surely over time, it's just built up. And now there's 40 plus wineries in the association. And the wine trail is actually across about 12 different counties. So our wine trails last almost more than a month now. And you get to travel. You can go weekend to weekend. You can just travel all these great wineries, meet all the winemakers. Your ticket includes tastings at all the wineries. It's a great thing to do. Yeah. And if you don't want to do the trail, you can just come to one of the festivals and you can just meet all the wineries right there.
Do it all at once. And what day is this again?
The Frontier Flight Museum Drink North Texas Festival is going to be May 31st.
So on Memorial Day weekend?
Yes. May 31st. Yeah.
The weekend after.
Well, that's a weekend after.
Yeah, weekend after that.
All right. I was sitting there thinking like, okay, but okay.
Yeah, weekend after.
It's the first Monday.
I always get my days and May mixed up. My birthday is May 13th, so I go, I always kind of try to think about May that way.
At least you don't have a leap year birthday.
I'm going to have a leap year birthday this year?
I'm saying, thank God you don't have a leap year birthday.
Oh, leap year birthday. Yes, right.
I feel bad for those people.
Although sometimes my birthday is on Friday the 13th, but it's always been a lucky day for me, though. But so the Drink North Texas is on May 31st. And then Gainesville, we're going to have it again in the fall this year. The fall weather was fantastic.
Oh, it was amazing.
So Gainesville is kind of our outdoor festival.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I know everybody that I've talked to said they loved the Gainesville one. They just had a blast. The food trucks are out there were so amazing. In fact, I don't know if you actually got to eat at the barbecue one that was out there.
I did. I got their brisket sandwich. And I always have to try the barbecue.
Did you eat the pizza also from the pizza truck?
I didn't get a chance to get that, but it smelled incredible when I was walking past it.
I bought a pizza and I sat it down for just a second, and my mom and my stepdad reached over and ate it, and I walked away for just a moment, and I came back and I'm like, the pizza's gone. I didn't get a slice of it. My mom bought some of the barbecue fries, came over there and sat down. It's like, here, you can have some of this. I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting there taking care of some few things. I turn back around and they're gone.
And the fries are gone.
I'm like, do I get to eat? But I will say the Gainesville, from what I saw, was very successful. People came out. They loved it. A lot of positive feedback from it, and I'm really happy for North Texas for putting that on.
I am too. The team did a great job. I have to give a lot of shout outs to the team, to the executive directors of the association.
You got your platform right now.
Like Chris McIntosh helped to lead the Gainesville event set up there, and then of course we have KK Hartman on the team. There's so many other folks. So Bob Landon is the chairman. He was the chairman this year, So it's a great association because the wineries do have that. They still have that camaraderie, and they help each other out. You don't really compete with other wineries in North Texas. You're kind of competing with yourself. It's like, how much better can I make the wine this year than I made it last year? And so it's a fantastic thing. It's great to see this wine region take shape in North Texas.
Yep. And, a lot of people don't realize when they come into the tasting room, they're like, oh, I go to Fred Expert. And I said, so let me ask you a question. Would you rather drive 1 hour to drink good wine and have a whole day of drinking wine, or would you rather drive 5 hours and have to stay the night and drink a whole bunch of wine? And they're like, well, I'd rather spend an hour driving. I was like, well, then stay here in North Texas.
Yeah.
You can go an hour and a half and you can hit Valley View, you can hit St. Joe, you can hit Monte, you can hit Bridgeport, you can hit Sunset, and you can hit a whole bunch right there. Or you can go east and you can hit, Salina here. You can go over here and hit Friendsville. Is it Friendsville or Farmersville?
Farmersville and Greenville.
And Greenville. You got all those wineries right there.
Sure. So Denison out that way.
Yeah. And then of course, Cleveland is blowing up all of a sudden now on wineries, because I think they got 6 now over there.
Yeah.
So they're blowing up. So, you can go down there. You can spend an hour and drive down to Cleveland, So you can go an hour within anywhere from the DFW area and get good wine. And then guess what? You can go back home and be in your own bed.
Yeah, that's the best part about it.
Exactly.
Yes, and there's actually a lot of tour buses now. And if you don't want to drive at all, definitely check out one of the tour buses. You can go to northtexaswine.com. That's the URL. We can probably put it down in the comment section of the video, but it's northtexaswine.com. And you can build your own trail. You can check out the different tour operators. Yeah, you can rent a bus.
Well, then we also have Texas Wine Lover app too.
Yes, the Texas Wine Lover app has many of those wineries in the app.
And it also shows a lot of those tour buses, like what's one over in
Red River Tours?
Red River Tours, yeah. So they're doing a great job over there. I'm glad they started that up, because somebody needed to start one over there.
Well, we do need more tour bus operators, it's true. So if you're out there listening to this, start a tour bus operation. Well, we will fill it up.
So here's what's crazy. Let's talk about tour bus operators and stuff. It's hard to have one in East Texas.
No, why is it hard to have one in East Texas?
Because a lot of the wineries, you have maybe a pocket, like 2 or 3 wineries in one area, and then the next one is like an hour and a half drive away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see. Yeah, no, the North Texas wineries are really they're pretty much equidistant from each other.
Yes.
You're always within range of the next winery when
30
you get
minutes at least minimum. But like you go over to let's just say Kiefersall, which by the way, if you've not drank Kiefersall Winery, I know this is about North Texas, but if you've not drank Kiefersall, go check Kiefersall out.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're even doing spirits now too, vodka, right?
Yes, let's not talk we're not talking about the bad times, the good times.
The good times.
But you've got Kiefersall there, you got Terra Winery, you got 3 Ps. You've got a couple of them right there in that area. But then if you want to go to like Los Pinos, it's an hour and 15-minute drive. If you go to Enoch Stomp or go to Twisted Pine, those are hour and a half drives. So there's a lot of wineries there, but they're just so far spread apart. So again, you're going to have to spend a weekend and go out there and drink. Maybe we should get Ron Martin to open up a tour bus out there.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to do that. I think he's retired.
If you do go to Kiefersall, you need to make that your last stop so you can have dinner there.
Oh,
that restaurant's something else.
So let me tell you a little funny story. Okay, so we did the We Know Texas Vino, Texas Wine Lover takes over Kiefersall. Okay. And so we all got there and we had a really nice episode, and we all went and have dinner and stuff. And since my weight loss surgery, I can't have ice cream and milk. It just makes me sick, double over sick. And Ron was opening up some Barrel 33. We're doing a elevated tasting at his house. Okay. Not elevated, a vertical tasting. Sorry. And so he had opened up 3 different vintages of this. And I'm sitting there like, I am so sick to my stomach. I don't know if I can drink this. And so he poured the first one, and I think it was a 2010, and it was good. I'm not gonna lie, it was really good, but I just couldn't drink it. My stomach was hurting so bad. So we're sitting outside, and me and Addie were sitting there swirling the wines a little bit, and I took another drink of it, and I was like, oh man, this is so much better. We've been sitting there for like 30 minutes, and it just kind of opened up, and it was so much better. Well, then all of a sudden, my stomach started feeling a lot better also. And in the Bible, it says, when you're feeling ill, drink wine. And I'm like, I found the cure for lactose intolerance. So we sat there and we drank the next 2. So we drank, I think it was a 15 and then a 20. And after you let it open it up for like 30 minutes, it was really, really good. But man, I was so sick to my stomach, and then I started drinking more wine. I was like, I'm feeling a lot better now. But my story
as part of my wine permit, I can't say things, like that wine's good for you, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's good for you. Yeah.
Well, but my point
in moderation.
Yes, in moderation, always. But my point is that restaurant there, if you've not eaten there, holy cow, the food there is astronomical, and they obviously serve keep us all wine there, and make sure they always pair you the wine with what you're eating.
Okay,
and that's one thing I love about that restaurant.
Yep.
So guys, we are coming to the end of this. We've sitting here, we've talked to now almost how long we've been doing this now? Almost 3 hours now.
Close.
So is there anything else y'all want to add to not only just Texas wine industry, but Texas wine itself, or even just the wine industry itself? What are you looking forward to in 2025 that's coming up? Right now we're fixing to have this polar vortex that just came in that I'm afraid is going to hurt some of these vines. So what is your prediction for 2025?
For 2025, I'm really seeing a turnaround, actually, in the wine industry. That's what I'm predicting.
Okay.
I think the last 4 to 5 years have been some of the wildest business climate I've been through. Mm-hmm. From pandemics to high inflation, it's been very difficult to call where things are going. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that 2025 now has a chance to be to bring some stability to the industry.
Nice.
I think that there's a lot of wineries now in Texas that have been making wine for over a decade now, and they've got their feet underneath them. Mm-hmm. They, for Eden Hill especially, it's taken us these many years just to find the vineyards that we want to get grapes from. We now have vineyards that we've planted that are coming online in 2025. And so I feel like that 2025 is going to be a year of positive change in the wine industry.
Nice. I like that.
That's where my head's at right now.
Nice.
And it's the learning curve. I always said in the wine industry, you learn something every day. Mm-hmm. I have for the past 30 some odd years, I've been drinking wine. So you want to keep that going, both in the vineyards and in the cellars, and keep experimenting with things, try different things. And sometimes I feel like there's things that are made just because that's, what's available. But changing things, I'm not going to say everybody needs to shoot from the hip, but be open-minded about things in the wine industry. That's the one thing that the wine industry has the ability to. You can always try something different. May not always work, but try it. Exactly right. Try it.
If it fails, throw it in a whiskey barrel and it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. There's always that. But it's the one thing that we've had, like Chris was talking, the last 4 years has been kind of a roller coaster. We're very white wine light here. We only make a couple different varieties in white wines because 21 everything was almost wiped out, and then it was short. So I'd like to see some new white grapes coming in. We talk about Italy and Spain being the workhorse grapes in the state with, Vermentino and Trebbiano, but I'd like to see something like Macabeo or something come in from Spain, or Viura, or something that's, bright, crisp,
big and crazy. And
I'm a big Macabeo fan. It's hard to find straight Macabeo out of Spain, but it's kind of like, drinks like a big Chablis.
Okay.
They do it unoaked, but it's got big mouthfeel and it's got deep stone fruit notes to it. It's a really nice wine. So I'd like to see something like that come into the state. We're a little light in white grapes in the state, I think.
I'm going to have to give Andrew over at Lonesome Vine a hard time about this. Have you ever gone out to his tasting room and actually talked to him about grapes, different wine grapes and stuff, and what he does?
Not about the grapes, but
okay. So every time I go out there and we start talking about wine grapes and different varietals and all of that, he has his. I love this man for doing this. He has this big periodic table of grapes. That's cool. and they're all listed.
You can see that square cloud too. He's got that same table. Yeah.
And it's funny because you can actually see the color. It lists the color of that grape and what it looks like as a wine. all through there. And it cracks me up because every time I talk to him about grapes and talking about the color and the clarity, all of that, he pulls that out and we lay it out on the table. And it's funny watching people that are in the tasting room while we're doing this, we're having this conversation. And in fact, actually, he did that for the our Christmas lit party. Me and Neil were there and we were talking about it. And I don't know what grape we were talking about. And he all of a sudden there's like guest in the tasting room. He just whoops this thing right out. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to find the grape on the list and stuff. And it's just funny, but it's amazing that we have information like that we can find stuff. I agree with you, Bill. We need to get more varietals that are Spain, Italy grown here into Texas. I mean, we can do all the French stuff. Mm-hmm. We can do all that. But as where Texas lines up in the world with Spain and all that, we line up perfectly with those areas. And so we should be able to grow any of that. It might be rough for the first go around, but we should be able to grow it.
And I don't want my fellow Texas winemakers to be afraid that they can't sell those wines in the tasting room. They do so well in the tasting room because, as we said before, Texans love to experiment. Yeah. They like to take risks. They like to take a chance. They want something new. Yeah. They don't want to drink the same wines over and over again. Yeah. So this is a great state to do that in. Try something new.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Chris and Bill, it's been a pleasure having you here.
Yeah,
it's been great.
Real quick, I want to hit my sponsors. We already talked about one of them. That's the Texas Wine Lover app. Great little app. Download it. Find that new winery out there. Find that wine that you want to experiment with and go forth. And then, of course, find a place to stay with that. Find some food. Whatever you're looking for, that app will help you find it. And then I don't know if y'all have heard of this place over in Mansfield called Old Vine, Texas.
I have not.
So they are a Texas exclusive wine bar.
Oh yeah, they just opened, right?
Yeah, they just opened. Eric has an amazing selection of Hill Country wines in there. He is actually working on trying to get some North Texas wines in there as well.
Okay.
But he's got limited room, so he can only have, I think he's got 13 different wineries in there right now. And he wants something bigger. And the plans, I'm not going to go into his plans because, plans always change. But the plans that he has for the future of what he wants to do there is massive. And I like what he's doing, and I support it 100% because he's supporting Texas wine. By the way, West Cave, I want to drop their name real quick.
It's okay. Margaret and Alan Fetty? Know them well.
They have a Rosé Syrah that is absolutely, not Syrah, Cab Franc. Rosé Cab Franc. That is absolutely amazing. And Old Vine, Texas has it on tap.
Nice.
And let me tell you something, that just a little bit of carbonation to that is so good. It just makes that red wine so crisp. It's like, in fact, the first time I drank it, it reminded me of, it had a lot of tobacco smell to it, but they poured me a big glass and it had a lot of fresh strawberry smells. So it's amazing how from a little taste to a big glass, it changed. So go check out Eric at Old Vine, Texas. They've got something great going on out there. Now comes to the grand finale of the podcast. We all know we do quotes of this podcast, okay?
Okay.
So here's a short one, okay? Wine is the mirror of the heart.
Wine is the mirror of the heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of explanation on that, but I thought that was a very good quote. I mean, if you have a cold heart, you're going to drink a cold wine.
I was trying to come up with a metaphor there with that. Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually what the really mean of it is. And if you got a warm heart, you're going to be drinking red wine. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but it actually sounded like a good quote. And this one right here, I debated whether or not doing this, but I decided to do it anyway. Drink wine and you will sleep well. Sleep, you will not sin. Avoid sin, and you will be saved. Ergo, drink wine and be saved.
There you go.
That's a good connection.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's a long finish one, but come on. It's really funny. I liked it. So, but I wanted to share that with y'all. Guys, it has been a pleasure of having y'all on the show and helping bring in season 3 of We Know Texas Vino. Okay.
We're thrilled. We're honored to be the ones to bring it in.
Yeah. It's I can't believe this is season 3. It feels like yesterday. In fact, you and I were just talking about
yes, the episode we were. Here, yeah.
It's been 2 years already. Yeah. It's been 2 years already. A lot of people don't know this. We are heard in 49 countries now. I'm hitting on 13,000 downloads right now. And Ron Martin's still a #1 episode with 700 downloads.
Well, Texas counts as a country. So make that 50 countries.
That's right.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. So, guys, this is Will.
This is Chris Hornbaker.
And Bill.
And this is We Know Texas Vino. Cheers.